Hey guys, this is Frank Yecker, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
Hey, this is Rich Franklin.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben. This is Diego Sanchez. Randy Couture.
Alistair Overeem.
Hi, this is Stephen Bonner.
This is Don Fry.
Hey, I'm Phil, Mr. Wonderful Davis.
TJ Dillashaw.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
Submission Radio.
You're listening to Submission Radio.
Welcome to another episode of Submission Radio. Dennis Gradov here with Kasper Ozolowski, hot off the heels of UFC Saskatoon. Cass, it wasn't the most exciting of events, but nevertheless a few things to break down here on Submission Radio this week.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. We're going to try and match the intensity that some people believe they didn't feel in UFC Saskatoon. Obviously, the main event not really going as people wanted. We've got some nice guests this week on the show. This week we have Mark Hunt. He's going to be fighting at UFC 193, which obviously was a massive announcement this past week. So we're going to be talking to Mark about his matchup against Bigfoot Silva, fighting in this big-ass stadium, Etihad Stadium. Also, part of UFC 193 is Robert Whittaker. He's going to be taking on the Count Michael Bisping. We've got him on the show. That's 2 for 2 in terms of Aussie. He's got a big match. So we want to talk to him about that and see if see what the deal is with Michael Bisping and trash talk, if he's going to engage him back. Jason High, in a last-minute edition, Jason High will be joining us on the program. Just a very quick one. We don't have a lot of time with Jason, but he recently got signed to World Series of Fighting. Obviously, Jason High had that controversy. He's been sitting on the sidelines for a year after shoving that referee, something that many people thought wasn't really that fair. So we're going to be chatting to Jason High. He's going to be the first cab off the rank. And then, closing out the show, Urijah Faber. I mean, he's spent a considerable amount of time with Conor McGregor. They're filming The Ultimate Fighter. What is it? Ireland versus USA. So there's going to be a lot to talk about there. We want the gossip, we want the stories, we want to talk about this whole manhandling accusations, how it's been between him and Conor. TJ Dillashaw has been getting in on the talk there as well. So there's a lot to talk about there, and it's a big show, and of course, UFC Saskatoon itself.
And apart from Saskatoon, Kasper, you went down to the press event for UFC 193 down at Etihad Stadium. Now, a lot of people around the world listening have heard it may seat 70,000 people. You got an interview with the CEO for the stadium, and you'll be able to break it down for us later on in the episode how exactly this thing is going to break down. So don't tell us now. We need to keep these people hooked. They're like a fish. We're going to keep them on the hook. But later on in the episode, after Saskatoon, we will break it down and let you guys know what we know about UFC 193 and our opinion on the card thus far. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. Facebook.com/Submission Radio AUS is where you can find us. When it comes to the magical world of Facebook, give us a like. We do have different posts between our Twitter and our Facebook. I know a lot of people do the same ones. We like to break it down. It is run by Kasper and myself. So if you want to get in contact with us, it's at Submission AUS or it's on Facebook. Give us a comment, give us a follow, give us a tweet. We love talking to you guys. It's always a pleasure to meet new fans. We always get lovely messages from people in places that we've never even heard of before who listen to the show. It makes us feel all important and happy. And also, if you listen on iTunes or any kind of platform, please give us a rating. It does improve our ability to pop up higher on the list. It helps us with our rankings, and we certainly do appreciate it. We're not making anybody give us 5-star ratings now. Just be honest and give it whatever you think. But hey, those 5-star ratings do make the Submission Radio world go around. And yeah, Cass, like you mentioned, a huge show. And without further ado, we've got the first guest on the line.
Alright guys, our next guest is a former UFC Strikeforce and Dream veteran, and he is currently the latest addition to the World Series of Fighting roster. He is none other than the Kansas City Bandit, Jason High. Welcome to Submission Radio, how are you?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Doing great. Sorry.
We're both doing well, Jason. Thanks for coming on to the show, and congratulations with being signed to World Series of Fighting. Take us through the emotions that you feel. You've been suspended for a year, and now you're back with an elite organization. You must be pretty excited.
Yeah, it's great, man. It's great to get back to work. And, of course I've been working hard, but, I'm just ready to smash somebody, ready to get in there and get after it,
For an MMA fighter where that is your real job, we can only imagine sitting out for that long must have been really tough. You say you've been working hard. I mean, you've still got bills to pay. What have you been doing?
Well, I have a gym that I call with LC Davis. He's fighting Bellator. He's fighting Joe Warren. It's going to be a big fight.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have a gym in Kansas that we own. We call, and we're doing all right.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Now, obviously, in the prime of your career, you were unfortunately suspended for a year. We all know you shoved a referee. A lot of people felt like it wasn't a just punishment. How difficult was it for you to sit out a competition for a whole year at such an important time in your career?
Oh, I was 32 then, and it hurts to lose a year, but, moving past it, and, I'm just ready to get back to work, man. I mean, like you said, it's been a year, but I feel like I've stayed sharp and, still training, so, I've been doing well.
When you have such a long time off, one of the things we imagine, you have a lot of time to reflect on certain things. And I'm not in any way saying the incident with the referee or anything, but any big revelations, any big things learnt over the past years now that you've had time to sort of reflect over life in your career.
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question. No, I mean, just because I felt like just because I'm off doesn't mean I was really off. I was still training and everything, but like you said, it's good to be able to. It is good to be able to like take a step back in an unplanned way, and just do my own thing. So I was growing the gym, doing that kind of thing, and I trained some jiu-jitsu. I went to an Abu Dhabi qualifier a couple months ago. Did a couple jiu-jitsu tournaments, so I've definitely been staying busy.
Well, yeah, sounds like you've definitely been staying sharp. I mean, during that year, was there any point where you were like, this is going to be really tough. I'm not sure whether I want to continue this. Maybe I'll just get another job and do something else.
Yeah, there's a few moments like that, of course. A year can be a long time. I mean, now that it's over, it doesn't seem like it was that long, I mean, it kind of does, but not really. But, when you're going through it, it can definitely seem long. But, I'm kind of invested in this MMA game, man. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy the training. I enjoy all of that. So, and I have the gym, so it just benefits everybody, myself and everybody around me, for me to stay sharp and then, get back to fighting and be ready to go as soon as the suspension was up. So that's what I was focused on.
Yeah, certainly. Now, obviously, you were in the UFC. Your last loss was to the champ, Rafael dos Anjos. Just wondering, what's your relationship like with an organization? Are you looking to possibly one day return to the UFC, or after everything that you've been through with the company, you're just happy to, work in other elite organizations like World Series of Fighting and maybe Bellator one day?
I'm with World Series, man. I mean, I'd never say never for anything, but right now the future is looking pretty bright with World Series, so that's what I'm focused on.
Well, the news is still pretty fresh that you've signed with the company. Tell us, how did this all happen? Has this been something that's been a long time coming, or was this a little bit at spur of the moment?
Oh man, I actually talked a little bit with Ray Sefo. I was up in Canada for one of their shows. I think it was maybe in June or somewhere like that. And, he asked me if I was a free agent. I told him yes, and I told him I'm going to be the champion in your division, and that was it, We've been working ever since.
Yeah, certainly. And a lot of exciting fighters in the division. One particular, obviously, the champion, Justin Gaethje. Just wondering, what are your thoughts of the champ? Is he someone that you want to fight soon? And, are you excited to be in a division with an athlete like himself?
Oh, he should be excited to be that I'm here. I mean, really, maybe not excited, Hey, I'm looking, he's the champion, and he's got a target on his back. So, I'd be a fool if I said, I'd be lying if I said, I wasn't the guy with that targeting device.
Yeah, of course. I mean, he's running out of contenders. He's beating them pretty handily. He's got his rematch coming up with Babu. When do you think we'll see you make your debut? I know you just signed with the company, but is there any kind of targeted date or a ballpark area when you would like to fight? We can only imagine after sitting out for a year, you want to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah, we're looking at November, so that's the date that that we've been kicking around. So I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, no, certainly. And, obviously Justin is a guy who stands out in the division. When you see the way he fights, when you see his skill set, what do you think of him? How do you think a matchup goes between you two?
He's wide open, man. He's a tough cat, but he ain't going to be nothing for me.
Obviously, we're all excited for your World Series of Fighting debut. Just want to touch on something else that fans have been debating. This is some of the unfairness that's been coming from sort of bans and suspensions. You would have seen the performance that Steve Mazzagatti put in the Jake Shields Hussein Paul-Harris fight, where a lot of people felt like he didn't do a very good job refereeing. He ended up not getting any punishment or any suspensions or slaps on the wrist for his performance in the fight. And you, of course, got suspended for a year for shoving a referee. Do you think there's there's not much consistency, and something needs to be fixed with the way that, these punishments and suspensions get handed out? Because on one hand, you have Steve Mazzagatti, who's had multiple issues as a referee towards fighters, and then on the other hand, you have yourself, who made a mistake, but it didn't seem that serious to a lot of MMA fans, and got a year suspension and a year lost out of your career. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there definitely should be, especially since we've had like a rash of, pretty egregious referee violations. I mean, there have been in the recent years. It seems like it's getting worse. I don't know if it is, but everybody's got to be held accountable. I mean, there should be standards for the referees, just as there are standards for fighters. So, I mean, you talk about like, I was thinking about this the other day, like John Jones, and John Jones has his problems, but the time that he was busted for cocaine, like, what's his recourse for them leaking that out of competition test where cocaine is not on the prohibited list? What's his recourse against them? For the damage to his reputation. Now, I'm not saying that he doesn't do something to damage his reputation after that, but that's a question that should be asked. There should be accountability on both sides for sure.
I mean, it's almost I say this half jokingly, but it's almost as if there should be a commission that governs the commission to see if they're doing the correct thing.
Yeah, they're judge, jury, and executioner for sure. No doubt.
It's an interesting situation. We can't wait to see you make your World Series of Fighting debut, Jason. Thank you so much for taking the time to jump up and chat with us. We can't wait to see what happens next.
Hey, guys. Thanks for the love from Australia. I appreciate you guys having me on.
What's up, guys? It's Joseph Benavidez, UFC flyweight, and you're listening to Submission Radio.
All right, guys, our next guest will be rematching Bigfoot Silva in what was considered one of the most exciting heavyweight fights in the UFC's history. He was also has an autobiography set for release in September detailing his amazing life journey. Mark Hunt, welcome back to Submission Radio. How you going?
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
No worries, Mark. Now, the big news, of course, this week is your big rematch with Bigfoot Silva is announced for UFC 193. Just want to get your initial thoughts. When were you when you found out that you'd be fighting Bigfoot again, and is this something that you were looking forward to?
I found out a couple of days ago. Dana tweeted me, and I said yes to the fight. So I found out a couple of days ago. But I'm excited about the fight. It's it's kind of disappointing from the last time we fought. It was a great fight, just marked because of the ped use. But that's over and done with now, and I broke my hand in that fight, and Bigfoot got suspension for 9 months. So we ended up actually competing again similar times because I had like 9 months off because my hand was broken. So go figure.
Well, you guys have obviously gone on to fight other people. Is this a fight that you've sort of been chasing since that original fight, since obviously the PED test, the failed PED test, and obviously since that draw? Is this something you've been chasing, Mark?
Well, no, I haven't been chasing. I don't really. I get told the fights that I'm going to fight, and that's it. So, it's a rematch. I've never lost a rematch, and it's one of those. It's going to be an exciting fight. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, certainly. Now, you mentioned that Bigfoot did unfortunately fail a drug test, which sort of put your original fight in a negative light. Were you disappointed with Bigfoot when you found out the stuff about the drug tests?
Well, I was disappointed, but I think everyone's got to try and get ahead somehow. I for one ain't cheating or anything like that, but it is what it is. It's the past, and just move on.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to ask you one thing, Mark, because you mentioned, everybody's got to do what they got to do to get ahead. The story was with Bigfoot Silva that he was on TRT, his doctor prescribed him a higher use. I just want to ask you, do you think it was a case of trying to get ahead, or, do you think it was a case of accidents happening?
Well, I don't think that's an accident. I think, trying to get the advantage is always, the case in the sport. Look at some of the top that bike riding guy. He lied for years about taking steroids.
Lance
everyone's different. So everyone's. When I say everyone's trying to get ahead somehow, so that's just the way it is. But yeah, so like I said, move on. Pass is pass.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, obviously, you're not someone who really cares about people trying to take advantages, but is any part of you concerned at all that he may not be clean in this rematch?
Well, I mean, it's not my worry and concern of what they do. I can't control what they can do. You know, I only can control what I do. So what happens when they get caught for cheating or whatever it is, and then it mars their career and their life, their fighting existence. You know, whatever they have done, like I said before, some other interviews, whatever they have done has been questioned. So if you've been taking steroids and cheating, you know, whether you've been a world champion or not, well, who knows if you're cheating why you'll become the world champion. So it just questions everything you've done, actually. So, you know, why would you want to risk that?
When you look at how Bigfoot has been performing since getting off TRT, you know, he's had a couple of brutal knockout losses. How much of a factor do you think that it was when the two of you fought? Because he obviously took big punches in your fight as well.
Well, I don't know, you know, I mean, I'm pretty, it takes a lot to break me, but I broke my hand on his head, so, but, you know, I don't know, I don't know what kind of advantages it gives you. I have no idea. Not a doctor.
That's right. Definitely not a harder head. Now, obviously, this is going to be the rematch. It's a while down the road since you guys last fought. How do you see the second fight playing out compared to the first one?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a 3-round fight, I think, this one, and I don't think it's going to go 3 rounds at all. And I started my pre-training way before to help Saul with this camp, and you know, I'm just back home now, so I'm going to be getting into my training and starting my camp in the next couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So, you know, I'll be in tip-top shape, and I won't make the mistake I did last time I was out, you know, having to cut weight. So I'll be fine. It'll end pretty quickly, I say.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the last fight, it was a while ago, but Dana White wasn't shy about calling it the greatest heavyweight fight in history. Is there pressure to live up to the expectations of the first fight?
Well, there's never pressure on me. You know, I'm just going to go out there and do what I do. You know, if it goes quickly, it goes quickly. If it takes a while, it takes a while. It doesn't matter. I'm there for the long way anyway, so...
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because Bigfoot's last win is against one of your teammates and close friends, Soa Palele, obviously one of the best heavyweights here out of Australia. Is this fight at all a chance for you to get a bit of a revenge for your friend and teammate?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of it's a bit of redemption. It's time to, you know, a bit of revenge actually, but it'll be good though. You know, I mean, I was disappointed that Soa lost that fight. He had that one. He had the first round. You know. I was just disappointed anyway, so, but it'd be good to get some revenge.
Yeah, I think the Aussies will be looking forward to it, especially because of that. Now, a few months ago, you came and apologised. You were on the show. You apologised to your team for not being in peak shape for the Stipe fight. You mentioned that your pre-training is going well and that you'll be in tip-top shape. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a bit about your training in Thailand.
Well, it was great in Thailand. You know, I went over to help Saul for his camp for Brazil. You know, and AKA is a great facility over there. You know, they've got some good guys there. So I had some good guys to work with. You know, he had a really good camp. You know, but like everything else on game day, it works out. So, you know, we stayed on and trained when they went to Brazil and kept training and, you know, amongst doing other things. So, you know, I'm feeling pretty good to even start my camp. You know, when I go over to New Zealand in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks to train.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we saw a photo of you from Thailand.
It's a good time.
Yeah, well, we saw some of the videos of you over there doing some surfing and stuff, so it looked really, really fun. What weight are you on right now? Because we saw a photo of you, and you looked like you were probably in the best shape we've seen you in your fighting career. Would it be safe to assume that we might see the lightest Mark Hunt we've ever seen at the weigh-ins for UFC 193?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was Photoshop now. No, we did. If we're just concentrating on weights and building a strong base, I'm about 131 at the moment, but I feel pretty good. You know,
Wow.
I had a few injuries with infection over there because of the dirty water and stuff like this. So, but you know, I'm in good shape for camp, so it's going to be good. I'll probably come in at about hopefully about a 115. So without a weight cut, so it's going to be great.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, I got to ask you, Mark, we also saw you reposted a video on Facebook in regards to the deplorable conditions that animals suffer in farms and commented, "I'm going vegan, hate this." Is this true? Are you really going to abandon meat and animal products altogether?
Well, vegan's a hard one, you know. I just post up what I want to do, you know. I mean, vegetarian is probably a bit more to ease my way into being a vegan. You know, being a fighter, you got to find some different ways energy sources. But I have been, a few people have reached out to me. A 300-pound vegan NFL player from the States have reached out, showing me, all the different ways. Actually, a lot of vegetarians and vegans have reached out, showing me different ways you can eat and different things. So, I appreciate all the help with that. But I don't think I'll go full vegan until after my career's done. So vegetarian, I'd say I'll try and stick to eating good food, probably. Yeah. But it's hard to try and go. Well, but it's not hard after watching those kind of videos. It's really sad.
Yeah, no, it's horrible watching animals being treated like that. And you're right, vegan's tough. No eggs, no milk, no nothing, no butter, cheese. But
yeah,
I just
no dairy product, yeah.
No dairy, no animal product, leather, nothing. But what I want to clarify, because obviously people put up things on Twitter and social media all the time, and sometimes you don't know how much weight there is. But when you say that you are actually abandoning meat, that is true. You are actually going to stop eating meat, and you will be vegetarian, correct?
I'll be trying to. It's not an easy thing to do. But like I said, I've got to still fight, and fighting is like, I think being a meat eater, you've got to be like a carnivore. It's got to have something to do with fighting. I said when I finish my career as a fighter, then I'll go vegan straight away without even eating any animal products. So,
wow.
Well, the biggest...
It's a process.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that's going to stand in your way is your love for KFC. We know it's your favorite. Are you going to have to wing yourself off? It'll be like getting off a drug. Are you trying to think?
I've already stopped eating that sort of rubbish. Being in Thailand for a while, it's funny because you have everybody's on like a healthy buzz. They're eating freaking good food. They're juicing. They're doing all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's pretty awesome.
Somewhere
it's good lifestyle to just train and live healthy, and to coming here, to hanging out with the kids and eating KFC and McDonald's.
Yeah, somewhere the Colonel has a tear in his eye. KFC is going to go out of business now. Before we let you go,
the Colonel's everywhere though.
What's that?
The Colonel's everywhere.
Yeah, he's everywhere. Well, he's not going to be anymore. Before we let you go, Mark, just want to grab your thoughts on your past opponent, Fedor Emelianenko, possibly joining the UFC. He's definitely coming back to MMA. What do you think about him coming back to MMA after retiring?
Oh, that's great, man. It's a long time. I don't know why he retired. Everyone has their reason, but that's a long time coming. He's one of the greatest fighters of all time. I was hopefully looking forward to welcoming him back within a rematch. I was hoping it'll be with me in Melbourne somewhere, but I guess not. We'll see what happens. It's good that Fedor's back in the fighting circles, and especially with UFC. He's got that's where the best players are right now, and that's where the party's at.
Yeah, for sure.
UFC's where the party's at.
For sure, man. So just to be clear, you wanted to fight Fedor in Melbourne, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out. Did you ask anyone about that fight, or was it just something on your mind?
Well, I never ask. Unless there's some freaking guy talking rubbish, but I never asked for that person. But I'm just, it was just a thought when I heard it coming back. I was like, maybe, I can welcome him to UFC in Melbourne. Who knows?
Wow, that would have been crazy. If you hear Dennis every week, how much Dennis loves Fedor, I don't know how Dennis will be able to contain himself. Finally, while we're doing predictions, let's get one for your fight with Bigfoot. What's the official prediction? How are you winning this rematch on November 15th?
First round by knockout, first round.
Well, there you go. Now, before we let you go, Mark, we're big fans of your clothing label, Juggernaut. What are a couple of new additions the fans need to grab today? Because we know there's always new stuff coming out. What are a couple of favorites that you can recommend for the fans to check out?
Well, the Juggernaut line's got heaps of different new stuff. We've got all winter gear now, jackets, a lot of stadium jackets. We're looking at trying to put a platinum range in, like with a leather jacket that I got myself. So it's it's all winter stuff right now. So check it out, www.jugnt.com. There's a whole lot of gear you can check online and go and buy. So you can support me with my fighting gear, and there's some good stuff on there. All trendy stuff,
Support.
We're trendy here.
We roll it with style.
Mark's obviously supporting us with all these jackets because we're freezing our asses off here in Melbourne. So don't forget to check out Mark Hunt's apparel line Juggernaut at www.jugnt.com. And of course, follow him on Twitter at MarkHunt1974. He will be fighting Bigfoot Silva at UFC 193 at Etihad Stadium. Mark, as always, thanks for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take it easy.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Lieben, and you're listening to Submission Radio. They're fucking rad.
It's a pleasure to welcome back one of the most exciting young athletes coming from Australia. He will be taking on Michael Bisping at UFC 193 in Melbourne, which will be held at Etihad Stadium in front of a potential crowd of 70,000 people. Robert Whittaker, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Hey, it's great to have you on the show. Now, we last caught up with you in your hotel in Adelaide. We could see the excitement in your eyes, of course, not only heading home to get ready for your son's arrival, but also coming off a major win against Brad Tavares. Describe those few days, because they must have been pretty amazing for you.
Yeah, you know, it's an amazing feeling to have such a long prep time for a fight and get, you know, a picture-perfect result. Words can't really describe it because it's just satisfaction, you know.
Oh, for sure. Well, we saw it in your eyes, like Hesper mentioned. Now, Michael Bisping is arguably one of the most respected fighters in the UFC. He's anchored many feuds, sold many events, fought the best of the best, and is probably one of the most known fighters due to the fact that he's been a top fighter for so long. When you heard it will be you and him at Etihad Stadium, did you have to pinch yourself? What was the moment like?
Yeah, you know, I was absolutely astounded by being able to get the perfect fight to put in front of such a large crowd and in front of my home crowd, you know. Words can't really describe it. It's going to be an amazing event, and me and him are going to put on an amazing show.
We love the matchup, but you've described it as the perfect fight. Why perfect? What makes it the perfect fight?
I think you know, Michael's got a huge array of skills, and he's got a huge arsenal, and he's gonna come looking to fight. He always comes, you know, looking to fight, and he puts on good shows, and that's all I want to do. You know, that's what I live for, is to put on good fights, hard fights, and you know, just kind of really crowd please.
Well, your last fight in Adelaide was super impressive. I mean, we were there. The roof almost came off after your win. But because it wasn't a fight night, people around the world didn't really take as much notice as they should have. I mean, you're a pretty modest guy. Does it bother you that you've been sort of under the radar with your last couple of wins, or do you prefer it?
It doesn't bother me. It's not. I don't really prefer it or not prefer it. It is what it is. You know, I'm going to rock up to whatever fight I have, and I'm going to put on the best performance I can, and I'm going to go to the finish. And if people are there to see it, so be it. And if they're not, oh well.
It's at Etihad Stadium, so I think it's pretty safe to assume that people will be there to see it. I'd be surprised if there's like 10 people in the crowd. You know, it's funny because both you and Bisping were sitting together at the press conference not that long ago, UFC Sydney Fight Night 55. It was a rough night for Bisping then. What do you think of his performance against Rockhold?
I think Bisping performed fine. You know, Rockhold he's a good fighter. I don't think anybody can take him away from that. And it's just his night, you know, his time to shine on the night. I'm not going to take anything away from Bisping because he lost to Rockhold. Because, you know, I've never fought Rockhold.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Rockhold wins a lot of competitions in and outside of MMA. But let me ask you, you are now obviously fighting Bisping, one of the main fights on a pay-per-view for UFC and sports in Australia. This is a major event, and Bisping will no doubt be trying to fuel a feud to try and sell tickets. That's what he does. He excites the fans with his trash talk. Are you prepared for it?
I'd be surprised if he trash talks me, to be honest. I don't know what he can trash talk about me, to be honest. like you guys said, I'm kind of under the radar. I don't really do much.
Well, No, you go. Continue.
Okay. I'm not super active on Twitter and everything anyway, so I most likely won't find out about it until bloody fight night anyway, so I'll leave it to me. But I don't think he needs to necessarily, you know, build a feud to sell tickets. This is going to be a huge card, you know, and it's in Australia, and it's happening, you know. There's some big names, big draws on it, and I think it'll sell itself.
That's very true. But let's say the old Bisping comes out. Let's say Bisping does trash talk you. Will you engage him back and give it back to him? You'll have to download Twitter, of course. You'll have to download it on your phone. You'll have to check it then. But let's say you do find out, Bisping trash talks you. Will you engage him back? And not 3 months after the fight's over.
No, probably not. That's not really my thing, to be honest. I kind of just cruise and just train, play games. The less to worry about, the better, you know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
Imagine that Bisping starts attacking your Warcraft games and all the stuff that you're doing. Now, that would be personal, right?
Then shit's about to get real.
Yeah. Well, many people believe, or many people have said that there's been a bit of a decline since he's had his eye injury. What do you think of Bisping at this stage of his career? Do you think that he's slowed down at all?
Definitely not. If anything, I think he's gotten tougher. The more wise and more experienced he gets, the more dangerous he becomes. He just adding to his arsenal. I think anyone who underestimates him because of his eyes is a fool. Look at his last couple of performances. They're not too shabby.
Mm. Oh yeah, they're not bad. Let me ask you something though. Tallis latest, that was a fight that I personally thought Tallis won. What did you think of his last fight against Tallis?
To be honest, I actually missed that fight, so I can't really comment too much.
Gaming off gaming.
It didn't happen in the World of Sanctuary.
Well, yeah, exactly. If it doesn't happen in World of Warcraft, Rob's not interested. You're a fast, explosive guy, and while some people claim Bisping may not have the speed that he once did, his strength, his footwork, and dragging out fights using a high volume of strikes to eventually wear out his opponents. How do you handle what is known as the Michael Bisping fight?
You just need to be tougher. You need to break him, and he's a tough guy. He's got cardio for days, and you can't let him suck. You can't let him suck you into his sort of fight. You need to attack him, and you need to set the pace, and you need to dictate the fight your way.
Mm. Well, when breaking down Bisping as an opponent, what do you do better? What do you feel like you do better? What advantages do you have over him?
Bisping's got a huge array of skills,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all tried and tested. But I think I'm faster. I think I'm stronger. I think I'm more explosive, and I think I'm hungrier, to be honest. And we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'll definitely see that. Before we let you go, Rob, we'll just finish off with the submission rated tap-out round. I'm not sure if you've done one with us before, but we fire off a bunch of fun questions, and you answer with the first thing that comes to mind, kind of like word association. You ready?
Yep, 100%.
All righty. We know you're a big gamer. What's Robert Whittaker playing right now?
Diablo 3.
I think he was still playing that when we spoke to you in Adelaide. Are you one of those gamers that moves on to new games as they come along, or do you sort of stick with a game for quite a while before you switch over to a new one?
Yeah, I really stick with my favourites. And I may switch between like a handful, but I always just end up going back to them.
Rob, when your son grows up and he's old enough, what's an old school multiplayer game you'll dust off and play with him?
Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate. Hey, Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We saw you did some go-karting recently, Rob. Give us the lowdown and don't lie to us. Did Robert Whittaker come first?
No. There was like a vet out there that was just like steering with one hand, just flogging me.
Wow, what an asshole. People steering with one hand. Why rub it in your face? It's one thing to come first, steering with one hand. Now, Rockhold vs. Weidman, who do you think wins it?
I can't answer that. They're both absolute weapons. Weidman's like a complete package, but so is Rockhold. They've both got really dangerous arsenals, and I think it's just going to be. I think I'm going to win watching it.
Yeah.
So you are going to watch this one. You're not just going to be doing other things. Well, speaking of doing other things, me and Casper, we will have to ask this. We spoke to Demetrius Johnson about this the other day. What is your favorite old school gaming machine out of the Nintendo 64, PlayStation, or Sega? And I'll give you Demetrius Johnson's answer. He said Dreamcast was his favorite, so we had a bit of a shock there. What's your favorite?
Probably the PS1. That's where I really got stuck into games. I was always playing them before that, with the Sega and the Master System, but there's the PS1 that really, corrupted me.
Yeah, corrupted. That being the operative word. See, we're Nintendo 64 guys, so PS1 and 64, they were the exact same era. What's your favorite game? If you go back in time, what's your favorite game on the PS1?
Probably Final Fantasy Tactics.
Now, Rob, obviously you've got the new son. We've seen the photos, like we've spoken to you before. He looks very, very cute. But you have to tell us the truth. What's one kids show that you can't stand watching anymore because it's always on in the background? What's one kids show that Robert Whittaker can't take anymore?
He's kind of too young to really watch any shows.
Mm-hmm.
So he just kind of looks at light, so it doesn't really matter what's on the TV at the moment. So it's like, I'll watch whatever the hell I want, and he's fascinated by the colours.
That's good. You need to buy some LED light globes, set up a little light show, and keep him entertained till the teenage years, so that you can keep the television and play games.
Tie him down in front of a strobe light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Finally, wow, that was rough. Finally, give us the prediction, Rob. How are you beating Bisping here at UFC 193? What's the official prediction?
I think Bisping's going to bring it. I think he's going to come there with expectation to win. But I go in there, I finish my fight, so that's what I look to do, and I think I want to finish him too.
Well, there you guys go. There's no more exciting fight, really, than Robert Whittaker versus Michael Bisping on UFC 193. It's going to be a huge fight for the middleweight division and almost like a coming-out party internationally for one of our favorite Australian athletes. You guys can follow Rob on Twitter, even though it seems like he doesn't really go on it much, at RJ Whittaker 1990. And we're excited to see him at UFC 193 in Etihad Stadium. Rob, thank you very much for coming onto the show.
No, thank you for having me, guys.
Hi guys, it's Jana Jędrzejczyk, UFC strawweight champion. Listen to Submission Radio.
Our next guest is one of the founders of Team Alpha Male and a former bantamweight and featherweight champion. He'll be coaching against Conor McGregor in the upcoming season of The Ultimate Fighter. The California kid, Urijah Faber. Welcome back to Submission Radio.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, Uriah, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but last week, as a fun addition to our show, we had none other than the porn star playing Ronda Rousey, Claire Valentine, on the show. And whilst chatting, she so happened to blurt out that she thinks you're the hottest male fighter in the UFC. How about that?
Oh, that's pretty cool. Who is it again? Who did you say it was?
Well, this is the name you need to Google after this interview. Cleo Valentine. Right, the porn star, she's playing Ronda Rousey in the porn parody Ronda Arouse Me.
The porn parody
of Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, that's fucking awesome. Well,
yeah.
I'll be checking that out, and tell her I said thank you if you talk to her.
We probably will never speak to her in our lives again, but yeah. If we happen to cross paths, then we definitely will tell we'll tell her that.
Yeah, it gives us an excuse to contact her again in the middle of the night. Now, we don't want to burst your bubble, though, Urijah, because she actually asked Ronda Rousey out on our show a little later in the conversation. So while you were the number one guy for her, Ronda Rousey is still the one she's after.
Oh, well, you know what? Rousey's got it going on right now, so don't blame her.
She really has it going on in seemingly every area. I mean, even as far as, who porn stars want to go with. But still, apparently, you're still the hottest MMA fighter. So let's jump into this crazy journey that is the new Ultimate Fighter for you. You coached previously against Dominic Cruz, who we'll get into a little bit later. What was your reaction when you find out that you'll be doing the coaching part but never actually getting to the part which we're guessing you'd like to do the most, fighting Conor McGregor?
It's interesting. I actually... Cruz and I don't really like each other. Conor and I have a funny relationship. We like to talk crap to each other, but I actually think he's a decent dude. And I think as a competitor, I think he's a guy that likes to win. So makes for a good competition. I was pretty pumped about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting because we haven't been able to check out the show, and you and Cruz do have a pretty serious rivalry, and the whole team. Tell us a little bit about this relationship that you and Conor McGregor have. Give us a couple of examples. What do you mean by this relationship that you talk about?
Well, I mean, we've had it on a couple occasions where we start talking and start into physical confrontations. But I think it's both of us like to. I mean, we're both fighters, and when personal space gets invaded, but I mean, never really crossed the line. Like tempers never flared too bad, etc. He could take a joke. I can dish it out and take a joke as well. And so there's a lot of banter back and forth, and hopefully down the line some sort of fight between us.
Are you guys almost friends at this point? It almost sounds like you've got a brotherly relationship going on.
I don't know about that. You have to check out the show and judge for yourself.
Well, I mean, everybody wants to fight Conor because of the big payday that comes with it, and of course the bragging rights of possibly beating one of the UFC's biggest stars. I mean, assuming that he does get the win and he still stays as champion, is that still a fight that you're looking to have one day in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I got into this sport to fight all the best guys, and I think matchup-wise, as much as he is in denial about it, his grappling was exposed a little bit. And he's a big, strong guy for the weight class. He knows how to stay in it. He knows how to capitalize. But, our guy Chad rolled off the couch and was basically had his way with him on the ground. So I think it's a good matchup. It's a good matchup for me, and it's a fight that, we don't know if it's going to happen, but I'd be all for it.
Is it? I'm curious. Is it frustrating for you? Because obviously, you've done tough before. You did it against Cruz, and you guys had a rivalry. Like you said, you didn't really like each other, so we understand the motivation for doing tough because you get to fight him at the end. Here with this one, you've got this relationship with Conor McGregor, but you don't get to fight him. You don't get that blow off at the end. Is it frustrating? It's like the cock teasing of the Ultimate Fighter right here. There's no blow off at the end.
How appropriate after the first intro to Ronda Rousey.
Right.
I would say, it is what it is. I think a rivalry with Conor is definitely something that's going to be long-lasting with our team because he's in the lighter weight division, and we've got a ton of contenders. I mean, I've got a guy out here, Lance Palmer, who's a World Series of Fighting champion, who's a high-level wrestler, who's an MMA star himself, and we've got Andre Thiele, and we've got Chad Mendez, and we've got TJ Dillashaw, and we've got myself, and a whole host of younger guys that are up and coming as well. So, Conor's not going anywhere, and Team Alpha Male's not going anywhere. So, even if it's not me with the fight, another fight is in the making for sure at some point.
Well, I just want to go back to the whole going back and forth in your relationship with Conor. You did an interview with the Underground where you said that he likes him until the end when he gets manhandled. Then he doesn't like it. So is that what's going on? You guys are sort of going back and forth and then he sort of snaps a little bit, or is it just was that just sort of a comment that you said sort of off the cuff?
No, I think that's what happened. Both times when we've got into it physically, it's been, he seems to be okay, like putting his hands on me and I put my hands on him, and then we start moving around a little bit, and we're just getting to know each other. We don't really know. We see each other in passing, etc. And this is the first time we've been, forced to be in each other's presence every day. So I think that was pretty accurate. It hasn't really happened again since the first two times. So, but I would say that was accurate.
I know you when you guys had that run-in, I believe, before UFC 189 around the bathroom when Conor was cutting weight, you were talking about the whole wrestling and the drag and re-drag sort of routine. Do you think this whole manhandling would actually translate into a fight? Because obviously it's kind of playing around. Do you think it will translate if you guys would fight?
Well, I mean, here's the honest truth. I'm a former champion, top contender for my entire career. I'm a very durable guy, but I have, I think, the most submissions in Pride, UFC, and WC history. So, that's one of the things that I've excelled at, and that's one of the things that Conor, and from what I've seen and from his past, he's got 2 losses from submissions. We saw the way Chad was able to handle him on the ground. So for me, it's a good matchup. Now, is Conor a dangerous guy? He's probably about maybe 20 pounds heavier than I am walking around, which means I'll probably be a little faster. He may be a little bit stronger, but it would be a dangerous fight, of course, but for both of us. I'm confident I could submit him, and I'm sure he feels like he can knock me out, and we both have trained in the other guy's strength. So I think it'd make an interesting matchup, but the truth is he's got his hands full with Aldo. That's a big fight that's going to happen, and I need to focus on what's right at hand right now, which is my next fight.
It's interesting, and I want to ask you about who you want to fight next and all that stuff, but just quickly, you mentioned the weight the weight difference and the size difference. I mean, you've been around the guy now for about a month or so. You're getting to know him, and you were around him during the weight cut. How much longer do you think he can keep going down to this weight class? Because from a fan's perspective and from what we've seen at weigh-ins, he looks like the walking dead every time he steps up to the scale. You almost want to donate $1 to him because you're afraid he's too malnourished. How long do you think he can keep cutting down?
Man. You know, for me as well, when I cut down to 35, I'm the same way. So I know how he feels, and he's a younger guy too, so he's probably got some growing to go. If he were smart, I mean, a bad matchup for him is my boy Chad Mendez on a full training camp. You know, Chad last time was on a hunting trip and basically got pulled out of the brush to go fight for a world championship for a guy that is very dangerous, and you saw what happened. So if Conor's smart, he's probably got a better chance of going up in weight class rather than staying at 45. And I think that's probably what's going to happen. But hopefully he sticks it out at 45s for a while. I'm not sure if the IV thing will play into effect. If they keep the IVs going, then he'll probably stay at 45s a little bit longer. If they take those away, I think a lot of guys are going to have to go up in weight.
Well, what about yourself? Because your last fight was against Frankie Edgar at 145 pounds. You've spent a lot of time at bantamweight, but last time we had you on the show, you mentioned how you really don't enjoy cutting that weight anymore. Will you continue to fight at 145? And also, what is going on with your next fight? Is there any names that you've got in mind at the moment?
You know, they've been talking about a couple of different names that I can't mention because it's not official, but they're talking about having me fight in December, I think December 11th, the day before Conor and Aldo fight. It's not 100% sure though. And the weight cut is terrible, but you know, this is the highest level of mixed martial arts, and you have to sacrifice at times. So I feel like I compete really well at 45 and 35. So it depends on the fights that make the most sense, the pathway to where I want to be, the pathway to making the most money out of this career. So I'm willing to stay at 45s. I'm willing to go down to 35s. It just is going to be kind of dependent on what the future matchups are. And I got to have conversations with Joe Silva and Sean Shelby on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're excited to see what happens next. It's good to see that you will be fighting, hopefully, in December. You know, another guy from your camp, Team Alpha Male, that's also sort of looking for a fight with Conor McGregor, and he spoke about this a couple of weeks back with us, is TJ Dillashaw. He'd like to do a super fight with Conor McGregor, and he was telling us how he'd like to sort of do it as soon as possible while he's still champion, because he doesn't think that Conor's going to be champion for very long. How do you think TJ would do against Conor McGregor? Do you think he'll have much of a shot?
Oh, of course he would have a shot. I mean, here's the honest truth.
Mm-hmm.
Conor McGregor is very good. TJ Dillashaw is very good. When you look at different factors, I mean, here's something that's for sure. Conor's a much bigger guy than TJ. TJ's a much faster guy than McGregor, and speed is an important thing. And Conor's not slow, but TJ's much smaller. He's not a huge guy for the weight class, TJ. So on top of his striking ability and the ability to wrestle, because he's been a lifetime wrestler. His dad was an All-American wrestler. His brothers are wrestlers. TJ's a more well-rounded fighter. I mean, the X factor there again comes into the power. You know, Conor's a big guy for the weight class, but I mean, this is the era to be seeing fights like that. And as far as money goes and getting a fight that can really showcase TJ, I think that's a great fight as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's funny because Conor and I have been around each other and have an interesting relationship. But him and TJ, two different occasions, have gotten into it with, you know, things escalating to, you know, them kind of bad-mouthing each other. So there's a little tension there as well, and I think that's a good fight. You know, a good fight the fans would love to see.
When you say badmouth, are you talking about through interviews and media or talking about in person?
I'm talking about in person. One time, TJ and Conor and I, in the back of the Ronda Rousey fight in L.A., we were in just a private little bar with some celebrities in the UFC brass, and words were exchanged, and, you know, TJ was talking about, you know, Conor's title shot, and Conor went back and forth, and they were getting on each other's nerves, really. So they ended up having to be split up a little bit, and then than when TJ was on the show. So you guys have to stick in for that.
When you say, I'm assuming you're talking about our show. When you say he was bad-mouthing about his title shot, what do you mean about like the way Conor got his title shot and how there's a lot of people who think it's because he's a big name.
You know what? You'd have to ask those guys the exact details.
Okay,
but
right.
It was
as far as my opinion, as my opinion goes, Conor's earned whatever he gets, just like TJ. I threw TJ's name out there because I had an inside scoop and knowledge of how good TJ was, and I think the UFC kind of did the same thing with Conor. They knew his potential, and I'm going to tell you, regardless of whether Chad was prepared or not, which he definitely was not 100% prepared for a 5-round title fight. Chad is a tough dude who's been training his whole life. So the ability for Conor to go in there and actually finish a guy like Chad, no matter what the preparation, is pretty impressive. So the guy deserves what he gets, but you got to love that guys want to fight each other. This is a fight game, and it's funny because you get these internet, keyboard warriors that forget the reason why they're even talking about us or know our names or in the conversation regarding the fighters that they're talking about is because we're bad dudes. I mean, this is what we do is put our lives on the line and put our bodies on the line and basically are raised like warriors from a young age. So, I like all the banter back and forth that everybody wants to fight each other.
Me and Casper are bad dudes too. We sometimes make our own shampoo, so just we're pretty bad guys. Now, I just want to ask you about Chad because obviously he did an interview quite recently where he says that the loss is something that's affected him deeply, something that he thinks about. How's he doing lately? Have you been able to speak to him? And also, has he come into the gym and helped the team out at all? Because I imagine that'd be an interesting experience, him being in the gym around Conor McGregor after that fight.
I spoke about the fact that Chad and I were raised different, and I think people were getting that miscued. Chad has been raised since he was 5-6 years old by his awesome pop Alvino, the great Alvino we call him, as like a lifetime competitor. Since he was a little kid, he had the best coaches. He's going to big tournaments. He's a preteen, state, national level wrestler. He's into junior high and high school. He's a standout wrestler. Into college, he's a combatant and a national finalist. The guy values his time off. I didn't start wrestling until I was 12 or 13, so I had to go. Chad super valued his time off. An off season in wrestling means he gets to go hunting and fishing, but that he goes breaks to stay sane. So even in his fight game, when he's off season, he's off season. So right now, Chad is probably hot on the trail of some sort of big game animal, or dressed in some turkey feathers, hiding in a bush, or trying to lasso a pig. I mean, the guy's out hunting, and that's what his real passion is. In addition to being a competitor, so he's loving life. Chad's living the dream, man. He's prepared to be a world champion, and he's enjoying his time off. But so we haven't seen him there in the gym this time around.
When he comes back, no doubt he'll have like a boar's leg for everybody to feast on. Before we wrap up with the tap out round, Uriah, you just want to get the update. What's going on with Martin Kampman and Team Alpha Male? We hear he's leaving the team. It feels like he just got there. Why the move on?
Martin's still associated with the team, and he's still helping out currently. He just had his third child, and I think he has some other obligations. Great guy, did a great job while he was there. And, we have a real set program at Team Alpha Male, and we have a lot of leadership and a lot of coaching. We help each other out a lot, and Martin's still going to be a part of that as much as he can when he can. But he does have some other obligations, and it's always family related with him because he's a real family man. We have an amazing setup where we have a lot of additions when it comes to coaches. We have guys that come in satellite and hold mitts. We've got guys that have been with us for years, and the leadership on the team comes from guys like myself and guys like Chad Mendez and TJ Dillashaw and Joseph Benavidez and all the guys stepping up to the plate. So it's an awesome situation, and we're looking for some more guys to add to the mix. Some mitt guys, come in, because we have over 40 combatants that are on the grind daily. Guys that have been with us since they're 10 and 11 years old. They're now 21 and 22. We got guys that have moved their whole lives from across the state or across the globe to come be part of the team. So we need a lot of input, and you know, Martin will be there, but just not full time.
Mm. Well, me and Casper will be submitting an application soon enough. I'm sure there's things that we can do around there. So we just want management roles, though. You know, we want to start right at the top of the ladder. I think we've deserved it. Now, just quickly asking, you know, there was a little bit of fallout between yourself, the team, and Dwayne Ludwig after he tweeted out some comments a while back. Just wondering, have things been restored, or are there still some ill feelings there? You know,
I've tried to keep it real personal because I don't want to air dirty laundry necessarily, but it's just kind of sad. You know, Dwayne is a guy that was really, really down and out when I gave him a call, and I've just learned that dysfunction kind of follows that guy. So we brought him into a great situation and really tried to hoist him up, and to see him bad-mouthing the team is kind of sad. It's, you know, we've done a lot for him, and he's been out of our gym for maybe a year and a half, and to see a guy like talk about guys that he hasn't even been around for a year and a half like he knows what the heck they're even up to is kind of strange, especially guys that have really gone out of their way to help promote a guy, because he was pretty emotional about how down and out he was at the time. So it's just unfortunate, man. You know, there's some guys that no matter the opportunity seem to stab themselves in the foot, and from my standpoint, what I've seen from him, I don't like the way he treats people. You know, he's a bully. He's done things that have really rubbed me the wrong way as far as building a positive environment, and I feel bad for the people that are stuck with him, because he takes and he takes and he takes, and it's not the way that I've built my team, and I don't appreciate his negativity. So for me, I'm done with the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess everything happens for a reason. If that's the way it is, I guess it's good that you guys went your separate ways. Just before we do the tap-out round, I mean, we noticed adopted Aussie Brian Ebersol wanted to chat with you about possibly taking on the position. Have you discussed it with him yet?
I haven't. You know, I've been pretty focused on coaching out here, and we're going to take our time with this. You know, I think we have a lot of internal guys that could step up, and we have to, you know, see if those guys want to step up first. But you know, we just need somebody who's like, for me, for example, I've got a lot of things on. I'm filming my first movie at the end of September. You know, I'm out here coaching The Ultimate Fighter. I've got my own fights going on, but, you know, I've been a team leader. We need somebody that can really step up and know the sport, but be mindful and have that as just their duty to be there every day to bring up the next generation of guys and game plan, etc. So we'll bring guys in. I'd love to talk to him as well. He's an accomplished fighter. Talking to Rick Rufus. We've got guys like Brandon Gibson out of New Mexico, who's been a kind of a satellite coach for some of our guys, and Ed Bilboza out of LA, who's a Muay Thai kickboxing guy. So there's a possibility that we could, you know, fill the role with a couple different coaches that can add something to the table. You know, this is a really unique situation, a great environment that we built, and we'd love to have a look at him.
More cartwheel kick.
I don't think
Sorry,
we need his body hair shaved for the coaching gig, though.
Well, I was going to say, you guys would look great with that, and also the cartwheel kicks. We want to see more cartwheel kicks from all of you. Now, we're going to quickly do this tap-out round with you where we give you a fun question. You answer with the first thing that comes to mind, sort of like word association. I want to kick it off with this movie. What is this movie that you're filming, and when can we expect it out?
I can't really give too many details about it, other than it's going to be kind of a cool comedy, and we'll be filming at the end of September, and you know, it's a 6-week schedule, and I'm not sure. This is my first time, so I'm not sure how long until the things actually get released. But it's going to be a movie after my own heart, and not necessarily an MMA movie. So it's going to be a fun experience.
It's not Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey, is it?
So you guys got to tell me that girl's name again. What's her name?
Cleo Valentine.
We'll text it to you after the interview.
That is too funny. That is too funny.
Now, you're right. Bill Goldberg gave you and Nick Diaz a lift. Literally, he lifted both of you up at the same time. How was that experience? Did you and Nick try and lift him afterwards?
Oh, wait, so what happened?
Bill Goldberg, he gave you and Nick Diaz a lift, right?
Oh, yeah, man. That guy's an animal. He picked us up like little kids. And Nick Diaz is no baby right now. He's a big dude. So
Yeah.
that was pretty funny. He almost tipped over while he did it, but he pulled through in the end.
Well, a good thing that he didn't give you guys the spear. Now, we saw that Don Fry was hanging with you guys quite recently. We have to know what transpired. We love a good Don Fry story.
Oh, my gosh, man. If there's one character in the sport that needs his own TV show, it's Don Fry. That guy is the king of one-liners. He's got the most manly American mustache on the planet, and he's been in some of the best battles since I was a young guy. So it was fun to have him around, man. I know he's doing a lot of stuff in the entertainment industry as well, but I mean, talk about a legend, man. He's a crack up, and the verdict's out for $10 million. To wear a pair of fake tits. I think we could strike a deal. If anybody's got $5 million, I bet you he'd wear at least one tit. So he just happened to throw that out there just in case any takers were there.
What do you mean by wear them? Like in under his shirt, or like get the surgery and get them?
Get the surgery, man.
Oh my god! Wow. Well, you know what? He'd still be more manly than us by far, and 90% of the population.
Me too.
No one would even notice them. Well, Father's Day is coming up, Uriah. What's the best advice you've ever received from your dad?
Oh, my dad's full of good advice. Let me see the best advice I've gotten from my dad. Seems like it happens on a daily basis, but the advice that I get from my dad is less spoken and more just seen. The guy is just an eternal optimist. So just having a great attitude among any time that strikes you is the best kind of lived advice from my pop.
Oh, for sure. I feel like you guys have a relationship where he just nods at you from across the room and you know exactly what he's saying. So that's awesome. Now, last question. We have to ask you this. Since you're so involved with the man doing the Ultimate Fighter, who do you think wins between McGregor and Aldo, and how is that fight going to happen?
Oh, man, to be honest, the power that Conor has, and we got to see it against Chad, even though he was a fatigued guy at the time, is pretty impressive. But I still got to say that Aldo is the more well-rounded fighter. I think people forget that Aldo actually got his start in jiu-jitsu, not kickboxing, and he's a very dangerous kickboxer, but his grappling is top-notch as well. So I'm gonna say it's gonna be a very close fight, but I'm gonna give the edge to the champ, Jose Aldo.
Yeah, we definitely can't wait to watch it. And Uriah, we definitely can't wait to find out when your next fight is announced. We'll have to get you back on when more things are announced, where we can talk about this movie, or we can talk about your next fight, and obviously do another recap of how your experience was on The Ultimate Fighter. Don't forget to follow, guys, Urijah Faber on Twitter, @Urijah Faber. Thanks for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure.
You got it, guys. Great interview.
And there you guys go, Urijah Faber, a Submission Radio alumni by now, Cass. He's always on the show, always has something to say. Probably one of those guys that is one of our favorites to have on the show because he's always so honest and always such an easy and great interview. Always a pleasure to have him on the show.
He's a very accessible guy as well. We've got a good relationship with the management down at Team Alpha Male, which is why we get a lot of the Team Alpha Male guys. And, so many of them are the elite fighters. So there's always a reason to have them on. There's always a lot to chat about. I mean, the guy is going up against Conor McGregor in The Ultimate Fighter. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I mean, we'd love to get Conor McGregor on, but we'd have to join the other billion people who also want Conor McGregor on. Let's break down.
He's on the show in spirit. Sometimes he's here on the show in spirit.
I mean, we get John Cavan on the show, we get Gunnar Nelson. I mean, that's kind of like getting Conor McGregor on, right?
I mean, exactly. I mean, look, one day we'll get the Conor McGregor spirit on and we'll interview him. It's like if anybody remembers in the WWE, Vince McMahon once teamed up with God or something. No, Shawn Michaels teamed up with God.
Yeah.
And God came down to the ring. We can have a Conor McGregor spirit on Submission Radio. We can interview the spirit.
Yeah, I can't wait. But we definitely do. Yeah, Shawn Michaels is a tag team match. Vince and his son against Shawn Michaels and God. So yeah, fantastic booking there. But I mean, hey, we do want Conor McGregor on the show. I just want people to understand that, because we do get a lot of people say like, you guys hate Conor Conor McGregor? Why did you get Conor McGregor on the show? You guys get Team Alpha Male guys on the show. Like I said, there's a lot of people that want Conor McGregor on the show. So
yeah, we love watching Conor McGregor fight. He's a great fighter, and no doubt about it. Without him, like we recognize the fact that without him, the sport wouldn't really be where it is right now, especially the featherweight division. So hey, one day we might be able to sneak him on, guys. Don't lose hope, but it might not be anytime too soon.
Yeah, I mean, like, just to clarify, when we ask people like TJ and Uriah, like, how do you think a matchup would go against Conor McGregor? That's not us saying like, well, you're gonna win or like beat his ass or anything like that. I mean, these guys are fighters. It's all about promoting fights. We ask them the questions, they give us the answers, and and then it ends up on the headlines. That's just the way it is. But we're not instigating. Well, not to say that we're not instigating, but it's not like we're trying to start some kind of anti-Conor McGregor movement. I mean, if we had Conor McGregor on the show, we'd ask the exact same things. We'd say, hey, you and Uriah, do you think he can handle your power? How do you think that fight's going to happen? So it is what it is.
We go from the different perspectives and we get everybody's opinions. And so definitely no misconstruing there, guys. We don't have anything against old Conor, and we love watching him fight.
For sure. And Irish people as well. We've got to include all demographics and markets. And not just, see, now everyone who's not Irish is like, what about me?
They're going to hate us. Yeah.
We like everyone. All people, rainbows, and all that good stuff. Let's break down UFC Saskatoon. It's an interesting card. It was a bit of a long one. It wasn't the most star-studded. And then, unfortunately, the main event didn't come to fruition. And that was by far the biggest thing that everybody was looking forward to. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on, but we'll start at the bottom of the card. Just a quick few things I want to mention. Chris Kalides versus Chris Beal kicked off the prelims on Fox Sports 1, or if you're watching in Australia, I believe it was Fox Sports 5. Chris Beal, he's had a lot of momentum, especially since that almost perfect flying knee KO, but I feel like that has put a lot of pressure on him to perform. He was doing well at bantamweight until he decided to move down to the flyweight division. Unfortunately, hasn't found any success since. Many people are pointing to the really, really difficult weight cut to get down to 125 pounds. And Chris Kalides, I was really impressed with his tenacity. He just kept coming, never stopped, and he was never out of the fight. Even when Chris Beal had dominant positions, Chris Kalides just kept firing off. He never backed down, and that's pretty much what won him the fight. Unfortunately, Chris Beal gassed towards the end. In the third round, the very start of the third round, Chris Beal was basically standing there. You could see he was tired. You could see he was trying to get himself together and not use any unnecessary energy. Anytime Chris Kalides would fire anything off at him, Chris Beal was still in the fight, but he just wasn't as aggressive as maybe he should have. Chris Beal, towards the end of that fight, was backing up a lot. It's very close. There was a lot of punches thrown at the very end of that third round. Not all of them hit. I don't think it was necessarily as clear-cut for Chris Kalides as some people may have thought. Like I said, Chris Beal just kept firing off even though he was being hit with other punches. But in the end, I still think Chris Kalides was the busier guy, and he did maintain the center of the octagon, and he did move forward as opposed to Chris Beal, who was walking backwards. So, I'm interested to see if Chris Beal will stay at flyweight or possibly move back to bantamweight.
Well, what would you like to see him do?
I'd like to see him be happy. I'd like to see him be happy.
We just want everybody to have a good time listening to Submission. But would you like to see him if someone was like, hey, Casper, you're his manager or whatever, you controlled him for one day and you got him to do anything you wanted him to do, would you get him to move back up? Do you think that would be a good move, good choice?
If I could control him or anyone for a day, I'd probably try and take over the world and wouldn't worry so much about the weight.
That's fair.
But if we're talking fighting, if I was strictly, exclusively just a manager in fighting, and so I could control, I'd probably see him move back up to bantamweight. Because honestly, at this point, he's lost to Neil Seery, Chris Kalides. Neil Seery, he's got a reputation. He's a known guy. Chris Kalides, not so much. When you lose to a guy who's a relative unknown, good fighter, but a relative unknown, you got to wonder, how have you reached your ceiling in that division? Is he still adjusting to that weight cut? Is there maybe something else that he can figure out? Maybe get on the Dolce diet, maybe find an easier way to cut down to flyweight. But if not, I mean, if he loses one more, he may possibly be out of the company. I think the UFC would give him another shot regardless. But maybe he should go back to bantamweight where the pastures appeared to be greener because at least he was winning. And that's the crazy thing. He was undefeated until he moved down to flyweight.
Well, there you go. Chris Beal, if you're listening to the show, some food for thought, maybe move up a division. Now, the following fight cast, light heavyweight, Nikita Krylov versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I hope I said that name right.
And Pazal. He's so greedy with the names, isn't he, this Marcos?
I know. He's like my biggest nightmare. If I was an announcer, I would just announce him as Marcos.
Yeah.
Like, and now Marcos. Nikita Krylov, a guy that, not under the radar, but a really fantastic fighter. A great background. Obviously, he's Ukrainian, so I'm Ukrainian.
Say no more.
So, am I saying I'm a great fighter? Who knows? I've never fought before in my life, but there you go. He's had some good wins lately. He's been in the UFC for longer than people thought. I mean, he joined up at UFC 164, which was in August 31st, 2013.
It wasn't a great fight. Him and Saul Palele, they were both gassed before Saul mercilessly. He used some mercy and he finished him.
Well, that's right. And there you go. So he was up there at heavyweight. Now he's down at light heavyweight. It was a good showing from him. I mean, this is his third win in a row. What about Marcos and those guillotines, Cass? I mean, the guy went for a couple of guillotines, and I always wonder this. Why do guys who aren't experts at the ground game always go for the guillotines against guys who have amazing ground games? Why does this happen? Why do they do this?
I don't know if I'd say Nikita Krylov has an amazing ground game, but he's definitely got enough to get himself out of those situations. I think the guillotine is like the call of the sirens. Never what it seems, yet who among us can resist?
No one can resist it. I mean, look, he is a fantastic grappler in the way that he's got a bunch of wins by submission. The guy was a submission machine, especially when he fought over there in Ukraine and across Europe. The guy was just submitting everyone, which is pretty interesting.
Taking necks, arms, legs, everything.
He was taking them with him. He's got a packed trunk full of body parts. But yeah, there were a couple of guillotine attempts. Unfortunately, not always the best decision. And I think Marcos really burnt out his arms. Nikita got a nice rear naked choke. But of course, Cass, the big subject up for debate, that fence grab. He was warned for it, but it was pretty close to that rear naked choke. What do you reckon? Do you reckon that was a big factor in the fight, or do you think it wasn't as important as some people make it out to be?
Yeah, fence grabs are annoying. Fence grabs are a big pain in the ass. I don't like them. I don't subscribe to the mentality of fence grabs. And something needs to be done. I don't know what needs to be done, but something needs to be done. But just in terms of the fight itself, if you watch, Marcos was going for a knee bar, but he wasn't on the right side. He was more on the side of the leg as opposed to the top of the leg. So I don't think he was going to get that knee bar. I think maybe when I first watched it, I was like, wow, that was potentially close. He may have gotten that knee bar if Nikita didn't grab the fence, but I rewound, I watched a few times. He was never really close to getting that knee bar. I don't think he would have gotten it even if Nikita Krylov hadn't grabbed the fence. And Nikita went down to the ground anyway. It may have affected the way he landed a little bit, but it's not like Marcos is going to get that knee bar. Even when they did get down to the ground, Marcos let Nikita get the hooks in and then choke him out via the rear naked choke. So I think it was a little bit different. It's not like when you look at, say, the first Jose Aldo-Chad Mendes fight where Chad Mendes had Jose Aldo in the air. Aldo grabbed the fence and then couldn't finish the takedown because of it. It wasn't a similar situation. They still ended up on the ground, and there was a few seconds between that moment when they hit the ground and between the rear naked choke. I think it was more Marcos's submission defense that let him down as opposed to the fence grab. That's just my opinion.
I feel like they need to get the Japanese guys from Pride to stand outside the octagon and lightly tap people on the fingers as they put their hands through the fence.
I feel like they should electrify the fence.
I feel like there should be a big sign on the fence in red writing that says, do not grab the fence. And then if you grab the fence, a guy comes out and kicks you in the nuts.
Kicks you in the balls? Yeah. Between that and electrifying the fence, maybe if they do like some kind of combination of both, because I think there's a lot of plus sides to this. If the fence is electrified, there's no wall and stall, could lead to knockouts, and it'd go back to that whole theory of having alligators around the octagon, so everybody wins. I literally can't see any downsides to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that needs to be considered in the modern day world of MMA. But yeah, Nikita Cass, light heavyweight, looks like it's a good fit for him. Are you excited about this guy? I think he might be a good addition to the division. I think he might have some more exciting fights in the UFC.
Yeah, he's doing well. I mean, he fumbled the ball against Ovince St. Preux. That was one of OSP's good wins. He won via Von Flue choke. I can't believe the guy used to fight at heavyweight. When you look at him now and you look at his frame and his body, fighting against guys like Saul Palele, that's crazy. So light heavyweight is definitely a good fit for him. And it was a good win, another submission win for him. Speaking of submission, just want to quickly mention the sweet armbar that Felipe Arantes hit on Yves Yabuan. Much to the disappointment of the Canadians, obviously Yves Yabuan from Canada. It wasn't actually a good night for Canadians in Saskatoon, unfortunately.
No. Some of them cheered though eventually. Like when one of their guys lost once in a while, they'd still cheer if it was an exciting fight or an exciting finish.
That's because Canadians are really, really good people.
They're nice guys. In Australia, do we cheer for any? We cheer.
No.
No?
No. If you're not
Sometimes we do. Well,
Australian
sometimes
and
there's
you win.
Australians that Australians don't even know are Australians.
That's true.
Because it's on early in the morning and they're still drunk from the night before.
Like
and then they'll
us.
just cheer for anything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Shrimp fried rice. Frankie Perez. This is the one to talk about, right? Frankie Perez and Sam Stout. Not only because of the fight, but obviously the slight controversy that happened afterwards. Michael Bisping was involved. Dominic Cruz was involved.
Yep.
So Frankie Perez. Actually, let's start from the beginning. Sam Stout. He hasn't been looking good at all.
No.
He was going to this fight on a 2-fight loss streak. All of them knockouts. KJ Noons, Ross Pearson, and now Frankie Perez. With KJ Noons, I mean, former boxer, you can understand getting knocked out. Ross Pearson, again, very good striker, you can understand getting knocked out. Frankie Perez, relative unknown. He's got good power, but he's a relatively unknown guy, and it was basically over before it started. Less than a minute. That's how long Sam Stout lasted. Unfortunately, something that's starting to become a trend of Sam Stout, he's gone through many, many wars, and I believe actually KJ Noons was the first man to knock him out. I believe that was his first knockout loss. And since then, it's like we always talk about guys who have these careers where they have wars. The decline is pretty much overnight. One day you're in wars, you're able to take big shots and able to continue putting on exciting fights, and the next night, you're trying to have those exact same fights and they're ending very, very quickly because you can no longer take the punishment. And it kind of seems like that's what's happened with Sam Stout. You know what? The funny thing about it is a lot of people would look at that fight and say Sam Stout should retire. And yet it's Frankie Perez who retired immediately after the fight. What did you think of that? What did you think of Frankie Perez retiring after his big win?
Well, I'll tell you what. Before I say that, I got to say, I think, with Sam Stout, a lot of people are going, he should retire, but he's done so much. I mean, I think I'd give him one more fight before he retires. But if he has some close friends, I think they might need to have a chat with him because you made a great point, Cassie. The guy hasn't lost due to KO, and now this is his third loss, back-to-back KO losses. I mean, it just looks like he's not there. And of course, the great man, Sean Tompkins, his coach, unfortunately passed away a long time ago. And it did seem like it affected a lot of the guys under him. So
Mark Hominick, of course. Yeah. I mean, a bond between a coach and a fighter, once that sort of goes, it does affect the fighter a lot more than people think. But yeah, in terms of the retirement from Perez, I loved it, man. I thought it was fantastic. Here's this guy who's 26 years old. What is it? Was that his first win in the UFC? Yeah, he lost to Johnny Case, and then he came back. That was at McGregor versus Seaver, and now he's won. This is his first official UFC win. Johnny Case, that was his UFC debut. So 2 fights in the UFC, 1 loss. Finally, he wins, and then packs the bag and goes home.
Yeah, I love it, man. Look, the guy's 26 years old. Here's the facts, and this is very, very sort of I don't know. It's something people don't really realize. MMA is a sport where you're not making millions of dollars unless you're the top guys like GSP, and you put your body through a lot. And just because you're an MMA fighter, it doesn't just make you an MMA fighter for the rest of your life. Some guys have different goals. Some guys want to become world champion. Some guys want to have one fight in the UFC. Some guys that do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu want to just do it in the gym. Some people want to go do competition. Some people want to go be in the ADCC. I think at 26 years old, Frankie Perez just shows fighters that, hey, you can get into the UFC, you can have a couple of fights, but it doesn't make you an MMA fighter for the rest of your life. You have other options. Your body does go through a lot. It's a big thing to give up. Obviously, we love watching guys fight, but the brain damage and the injuries they go through, are astounding at times. And I think it just shows guys that there's other pathways than just sticking it around in the UFC until you're older, much like Dan Henderson or Nogueira, or sticking around a bit for too long, maybe like some people think Sam Stout is. So I think it was really, really cool. What did you think, Cass?
I think it should be, and you covered it very well. I think it should be applauded that someone is retiring so early, because it seems like the trend these days is fighters not being able to retire early enough, and a lot of people really calling for their retirement. So I think it's good. I think Michael Bisping had some choice words. He said that he basically says that he doesn't have the cojones and to leave it to the real men, and that it's a tough sport. I mean, Bisping's going to Bisping. I'm not going to take anything away from it. Dominic Cruz came back at him and said that something along the lines of leaving a bit earlier rather than sticking around too late. It's something that a lot of people could learn, including Michael Bisping. Then they went a bit back and forth. Bisping said, at least I fight. And then Dominic Cruz said, hey, top 5, top 10, pointed at Bisping. Bisping said 2 foot tall. And then Dominic Cruz said, 1 eye.
Good stuff, Dominic Cruz, for taking it to him, for sure. I think it does take more balls or cojones to retire once you get that KO win than to be sucked in and just fight just for the sake of it. I mean, the guy made a huge move. No doubt he would have given up a paycheck that was a little bit higher. He would have given up another fight, popularity, fans, all that stuff, Twitter ads and follows and all that superficial stuff that what does it really mean at the end of the day? And, you know, he said, I'm sick of making my family worry. I don't want to put him through that anymore. So great stuff by Frankie Perez. And hey, what a way to go outcast. A KO over a guy like Sam Stout. Could it be any better?
I think
26 years old.
A lot of guys get addicted to the KO and just wins in general. I'm not a fighter, but from everything that we've seen and heard, it just seems like a lot of guys get really addicted to that win, that rush, getting a hand raise in the octagon on such a big platform. And maybe Frankie realized that he was never going to become champion. He was probably never going to make the big bucks. And maybe that's why he quit. Maybe that's why he decided that, you know what, rather than going the next decade or however long he'd fight, possibly getting cut from the UFC and trying to find his way back up in smaller promotions, not really making the money. Maybe he thought, maybe he got a job offer. Who knows? We don't know what his background is. We don't know how much of a family man he is. So, yeah, no, definitely take my hat off to Frankie Perez. Good on him for quitting when he thought it was the right time when so many other people have failed to do so. Yeah, absolutely. And a great precedent for future fighters. You don't have to beat yourself up until you're a bloody pulp. You can get out whenever you want. Now, Cass, because the fight was so quick, I did notice that the broadcast was sort of dragging on a bit. It felt like the prelim card just wasn't very packed. And because I guess certain fights finished sooner, we were just kind of stuck watching, countdown type clips and other fights from the prelim UFC Fight Pass card. It really sort of put a drag on me for the event because, I watched it from the very start. I suppose if you just watch it from the main card, it doesn't really affect you, but it did take it out of me a little bit. Yeah, I can understand. We did get to see the Fight Pass fight between Misha Serkinov and Daniel Jolley. Misha doesn't mess around, does he? Who, Misha? Yeah, he doesn't mess around. He's a serious man. Serious man. He reminds me of like Ivan Drago. Yes. And then like he's got this name like Misha, which I mean, he's Latvian, I believe. Normally when I think Misha, I think of Misha Tate. Perfect example. Yeah. Chick's name. But then you get this like not small guy, not intimidating guy named Misha, and it's like I feel like he was almost like a robot, like Misha, crash, destroy, Serkinov. And then you got Daniel Jolley, who is like in the top 5 guys that I don't want to run into in a back alley. And if I did, he may not even look at me. I'd be like, just take my wallet. I don't want to go through this. Just take my wallet. I'll tell you what, both guys are the deceiving names. Misha, obviously a serious man, and Daniel Jolley, not very jolly. No. Kind of looks like Mr. T, but it was a great fight nevertheless. Misha did win with a KO at 4 minutes and 45 seconds. It's funny that you mentioned that back alley comment because we're moving on to the women's strawweight bout. And John Anik said when Moroz was coming out, she's not somebody that you want to run into down a dark alley. That's an interesting comment considering everyone else is on the card. I know. And I also think even though many MMA fans would get beat up, they still wouldn't mind running into her in a dark alley. Right, yeah. I mean, I just want you to avoid. I'd get an autograph from her. She seems friendly. Get an autograph, get a hug, get a photo, put that stuff on Snapchat. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Back alleys get a bad rep on TV these days. I feel like back alleys need to hire a PR department to give them a good rep. But somewhere back alleys are like, we've had enough of this for years and years. We've had a bad rep. We want to turn this around. They need to have like hot dog vendors and nice lights in back alleys. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. It's this whole thing. It must be something to do with the government trying to control us. But anyway, back to the UFC card, Cass. A big fight for the women's strawweight division. Now, Cass, you're always vocal about the fact that you want to see important women's fights make the main card because how else are you going to make people care about the fighters when they get up to the title shot? Were you happy to see this one made the main card? Yeah, absolutely. Well, Marina Moroz, she's had a lot of hype behind her since her destruction of Joanne Calderwood. I believe that was in Poland. And Big Val Letourneau, she's been sliding under the radar, and she's quietly put together, I believe, a 3-fight win streak in the UFC, which is fantastic. I'm happy for Big Val, even though she doesn't speak much English, and the post-fight interview could not have gone any worse. She's a lady of few words. She reminded me of she kind of sounds like GSP, kind of. She's got the same, that Montreal, Quebec accent. Speaking of the actual fight itself, Marina's biggest problem here was not being able to get off the ground. She's got the striking. She also, in my opinion, doesn't have that killer instinct. She hurt Valerie. She didn't rush in there. She didn't really capitalize, and Valerie was able to take control and pick her apart and get her down on the ground. It's interesting because style-wise, Marina may have a better chance against Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Obviously, Marina, in case you missed it, I didn't know this until the broadcast, 76 wins as a boxer. That's crazy. So no wonder she's so confident in wanting to fight the champion. And obviously, the champion is less likely to take her down to the ground. But against somebody like Valerie, as they always say, styles make fights, was able to capitalize on that. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought Marina was gonna go in there and win. Big Val really impressed me, but the thing is, Miraz, I think she's only 23 years old, Cass, around that bracket, and even though she's an experienced boxer, she doesn't understand the difference, I think, between boxing and MMA striking as much just yet, and her biggest flaw, in my opinion, was she just didn't defend strikes. She left her chin out there, and she actually jumped in to a lot of Big Val's strikes. She had some good moments, but then she just wouldn't get her hands up. I guess in boxing, the gloves are bigger and you can actually take a lot more punches to the jaw. But with the gloves the way they are in MMA, you can't let someone hit you across the jaw. It's just a really, really bad idea, and she paid for it. So I think she's really young. She's going to learn a lot from this fight. I think we're going to see a completely different Moroz next time she steps out. And one of the big things she's going to do is make sure her hands are up, not jump in with her hands down so she get caught every time. And I agree with you, Cass. She needs to just work on that killer instinct a bit more as well. So I think she could be a big star in the future. I think we may see more of her. And in a way, it's kind of good that she lost, because I don't think I want to see her against Joanna just yet. I think Joanna would pick her apart with the striking that she has right now. So I'd like to see her fix up a few holes in her game first and then come back.
The good thing about women's strawweight, I feel like we're still finding out and establishing who the stars are. Even though a lot of the ladies have big backgrounds in Invicta and other organizations, other than the hardcore fans, a lot of casual fans may not know that much about them. So you've got, like, say, Felice Herrig, who has, very well known, a big background, but then you get the casual fans, they may not know much about Felice Herrig. And same with the other women in the division. So a loss this early for Marina, it doesn't take that much away from her, because I feel like a lot of the women there are still kind of on an even playing field. So with a few more big wins and impressive wins, kind of like the one against Joanne Calderwood, she can find herself gunning for that title shot pretty soon.
Yeah, for sure. And she's definitely got a mean scowl on her face. So I'm looking forward to see what happens with her next. Cass, what about the lightweight fight afterwards? We've got Olivier Aubin-Mercier versus Tony Sims. Did you like my French pronunciation there, Cass?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I was thinking that's really good. Did you take a trip to France in the last few hours that I wasn't aware of?
I've been buying tapes. Do I need to take a trip? Would I have my tapes, man?
You've been studying tape on Olivier Aubin-Mercier's name. Like, not the fights, just Bruce Buffer announcing his name.
Well, exactly right. I didn't actually watch the podcast because I was practicing his name. So what did you think of it?
It was good. Also, the fight was okay as well. The fight itself, it wasn't the most exciting one. Olivier obviously went for the takedowns a lot. Tony Sims was actually able to stuff quite a lot of them, and when he couldn't, he found himself on the ground, much to Aubin-Mercier's mercy. There wasn't really many times in that fight where I thought Olivier was in a position to finish, so for me, it just wasn't the most exciting fight. A lot of stalemate in that fight. Tony Sims is a great striker. He just wasn't able to get off on Olivier, so to me, it was a bit frustrating. I'm amazed at how many similarities there are, though, between Olivier and our own Australia's own Jake Matthews. You've got the Quebec kid, you've got the Celtic kid. They're both at lightweight. They're both extremely young. There's a lot of similarities. I'd love to see them get it on at some point.
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you what, with this fight, Aubin-Mercier, he's a bit alarming to me, Cass, and I'll tell you why. He's a fantastic grappler, but I'm a bit worried that he's just focusing on his grappling a little bit too much and on his striking not enough. And there was a moment there where our mate Tony had him down on the ground, and he was laying a few shots sort of to the side of his head. There were a couple of shots to the back of the head, and you could see that Mercier just didn't know what to do in that situation. He was just sort of stuck. Took the spirit out of him a little bit. And it's just one of those typical things, a grappler who's not used to getting hit in the head, not really used to being in exchanges. So what I really want to see from him is, I know he's a great grappler. I know it's a high statistic for him to take someone down and to dominate him, grind him down into a nub on the ground, but I really want to see him use his striking as well and mix it up. Now, Tony is a fantastic striker, so you don't want to get caught with him. And most likely, if he did strike with him more, maybe he would have gotten knocked out. But I'd like to see in the next fights, in the gradual fights, I'd like to see an improvement in his striking. Because if he does get to the top end of the division and he's just a grappler, he's going to be in for a rude awakening, because most of the guys up there will stop his takedown and then he's going to be stuck standing with him. And it's going to be a lot of rough nights for him. So he really needs to focus in on that now.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to see the journey continue for Aubin Mercier and see what he can put together in his next fight. And just to clarify, I'm aware that obviously him and Jake Matthews fought in TUF, but you know it's one thing fighting in TUF. I actually want to see them fight in the UFC per se. Let's talk about the next fight: Francisco Trinaldo versus Chad Laprise. Another guy of the Ultimate Fighter product in Chad Laprise. A lot of people thought it was a shoo-in. A lot of people thought that Chad Laprise was going to win this one. A lot of people writing off Francisco Trinaldo. Francisco was there to prove everybody wrong and then invite everybody to his birthday party afterwards, and that's exactly what he did. What did you think of the fight, Dennis?
Well, I want to go to the birthday party, and I wonder if we can get a ticket down there. I think Chad Laprise is a guy who's been coming up with Mercier as well. Obviously, they're both from TUF, and Trinaldo was on the Brazilian TUF as well and didn't make it too far through there either. I thought the fight was going to be won by Chad Laprise because I think Chad had a bright future in the division. I was surprised that Trinaldo won, but every time I watch Trinaldo fight, I just see that aggression, that passion, that heart. It's almost like he can't get out of that cage without winning. It's almost like everything is in that fight for him. And he's had such a rough life. For people that don't know, he didn't have much money growing up. He had some tough circumstances and at times couldn't even go to train because he didn't have enough money to get a bus there. And now he's having birthday parties at 37 years old. I mean, it's awesome to see the guy have such a nice life now and being able to turn it all around through MMA.
Yeah, Chad Laprise, the interesting thing about his losing is usually he comes out guns blazing in the first round. Usually the first round is his best one. He was met with someone who had equal aggression, if not more, and unfortunately, I think Chad Laprise was a little bit too aggressive, and that's why he got countered. His biggest criticism has been fading towards the end of his fights. This time, obviously, wasn't a factor at all. I just can't tell you how happy I am for Francisco Trinaldo. The other thing is, he pulled guard. I understand that he was hurt, but I don't necessarily agree with the decision to pull guard, especially because that's where Francisco wanted the fight to go. And once Chad was on, I may be underestimating just how hurt he was, but I think it was a big pivotal mistake to take the fight to the ground and pull guard, and he paid for it. He paid for it brutally, and now he may not even go to the birthday party.
Yeah, I know. And of course, the big factor in this fight is Chad Laprise's birthday was on July 23rd, so he had no birthday party to look forward to.
Right, exactly. He's going to have to wait a year. Even if he won, he wouldn't be able to invite everybody. I feel like, back in the day, fighters would be like, by the way, I've got an after party at this club. And then the UFC sort of like, they got a bit shitty with it and they're like, no more of that. I feel like Trinaldo's, screwing with the system. He's baiting the system. He's found a loophole.
They might fine him all of his money. And then
exactly.
He'll have issues again. So
yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what.
Started from the bottom and now he's back.
It sounds like those kids are going to have a good party, though. I bet you he'll supply chocolate, all kinds of delicious treats. I mean, I don't know if it's worth the ticket from Australia to Brazil, but I'd consider it.
It's at his mum's house. I'm sure his mum's a good cook as well, so I don't know. Maybe we'll leave. Maybe we'll miss Submission Radio for the next month because we'll be partying with Francisco. Let's talk about Patrick Cote and Josh Berkman, two veterans. I mean, this isn't exactly a fight that's neither one of those guys are probably going to be fighting for a title at any time soon, but it's just a good goddamn fight. It was fun. Patrick Cote, his right hand, his nuclear right hand, has been something of a myth, and in the last few years, it's been missing in action. He's been focusing on his wrestling against Kyle Noak. Obviously, we saw him take Kyle Noak down. I think old Kyle was a bit surprised by that kind of approach, just because Patrick Cote is known for his stand-up exchanges. He was rocked. He got hurt. Josh Berkman. Two guys with big power punches and awesome chins. I mean, it made for a great contest. In the end, though, Cote's big right hand made a return after so many years of lying dormant, like a volcano erupting in Hawaii that hasn't erupted in many years. The right hand came out and finished Josh Berkman off. So it was a good, fun fight. What'd you think, Dennis?
Yeah, a good fight there. Josh Berkman hasn't had a very good run in the UFC. Obviously, the no contest against Hector Lombard, it was overturned when Hector tested positive for something, and then he's obviously lost to Dong Hyun Kim, and now Patrick Cote. not the best run. It's interesting how you mentioned that fight was put together. It's such a random fight to put together in 2015. You'd think you'd see these guys fight like 10 years ago, maybe
like
even
UFC
more.
74 or something.
Yeah, crazy stuff. I thought it was an exciting fight. Both guys definitely delivered. I'd like to see Josh have one last shot in the UFC before they cut him. What did you think of the stoppage there, Cass? It took a while for Patrick to get the win there. He was punching Josh for a while on the ground. Josh was covering up there. He was moving around. It's sort of borderline. What did you think? A bad stoppage or all right?
I didn't think it was that bad, to be honest. When you got a guy as tough as Josh Berkman, and I know it's a bit of a debate because just because a guy is tough, it doesn't mean you let the fight go too long. Sometimes, like we've talked about many times, sometimes guys are too tough for their own good. I'm in favor of letting the fight go just a little bit longer just to see if the guy can get out of it. And I think recently there's been a lot of stoppages that have been too short. So I didn't think it was that bad of a stoppage. I only watched it once, but I don't think it was the worst.
Yeah, I watched it once, and I didn't think it was the worst. I was like, why is it taking so long for him to stop this fight? But then I sort of had a look at Josh, and he was moving around, and he was covering up. So I thought, yeah, I'll take it. I don't think it was too bad. I think people need to calm down with that one. Of course, the referee, I'm not sure if you know what the referee's name was, Cass, but he's been known to have a lot of bad stoppages and a lot of bad work in the octagon. So maybe it was the fact that he's had a bit of a bad precedent that's gotten people to sort of complain about it. Yeah, and he's had a bad run, right? Bad reputation as a referee.
You know what? He's had a few. Honestly, these referees, in my mind, they're very interchangeable. I forget who's done what, who's done damage. I know there was that one referee in Brazil, and he was meant to be a black belt. And then there was that fight that was stopped, I think, due to guillotine, even though the guy never tapped. I mean, that dude's got he will always have a place in my heart, even though I've forgotten his name since. But the other referees, I don't know. They're just kind of interchangeable.
Do you think it's unfortunate that Steve Mazzagati's got usually has a mustache? So even though he does do a bad job here and there, he's very rememberable. You can't forget the guy. He's always in your mind.
Well, you remember him as the guy with the mustache. I agree. Yeah, I don't think he has the mustache anymore though. I think he got rid of it for that exact purpose. I think his
it just
PR
doesn't
people,
help. It's
no,
too late.
I think
once you have a mustache, that's it. Learn from your mistakes, Steve Mazzagati.
People remember you. You're framed for life. What about Patrick Cote calling it Hector Lombard afterwards? I know Hector Lombard, he wants Rory McDonald. He wants to teach Rory McDonald a lesson. But Patrick Cote, I respect that. He's a businessman. He's trying to sneak in there and get a high-profile fight. Because even though Josh Berkman, that was a good win for him, it's not the most high-profile fight. It was a high-profile fight for this card, but if you take that on a UFC pay-per-view, these guys would undoubtedly be fighting on the prelims. So good for Patrick Cote calling it Hector Lombard. I don't think that fight's going to get made, though.
Yeah, I like the fact that he's calling people out as well. You and me would like to see that, Cass. So
love it.
Good stuff, Patrick Cote. Even if it did take however many years to get there.
Yeah,
good stuff. And he looked like he was in good shape as well. Actually, sometimes he can get in the octagon and be a little bit over, look a little bit soft, but he looked He looked in decent shape this time.
He's never had a great physique, Patrick Cote. He's always looked soft, and this is by far the leanest and the closest to shredded I've ever seen him. So the dude, he definitely looks like he's putting in work. He looks like he's working hard, and obviously with all that extra wrestling that I imagine he's doing nowadays, it's definitely got to melt the kgs off. Let's talk about the next fight, same division welterweight, Neil Magny versus Eric Silva. Eric Silva's one of those guys, I feel like the world was placed on his shoulders and he had a tremendous amount of pressure. He came into the UFC guns blazing, known as one of the best first-round fighters, probably up in there in the Hall of Fame of first-round fighters with BJ Penn and the likes of those guys. And, Anderson, when you have a guy like Anderson Silva say that you are the one who's going to be taking the torch and taking on the throne, and when Anderson retires, Eric Silva will be the continuation of Black House. It's got to put a tremendous amount of pressure. And unfortunately, thus far, his UFC career, Eric Silva's, has been rather underwhelming. Every time he's faced top competition, unfortunately, he's lost. Neil Magny, kind of the opposite. He's a guy who's been going under the radar, and a lot of people have been saying, when is he finally going to fight top competition? When is he finally going to get a step up? To me, I think this was his biggest win this far for Neil Magny, and for Eric Silva, I think it's a bad loss, because it's one thing to lose to guys like Matt Brown, I don't know, John Fitch, but when you're losing to an upstart guy like Neil Magny, it doesn't do good for the credibility. What do you think, Dennis?
Yeah, I agreed with you. And speaking of soft, I think Eric looked a little bit soft as well in that octagon. Didn't look like he was in the best shape as well. I think pat on the back to Neil Magny, the guy is smart, a guy in his position who got absolutely dominated by Damian Maia might go in the cave, sort of get away from the world for a while and then return eventually. And he said, nah, stuff it, man. I'm ready in shape. Let's take another fight. And with a guy like Eric Silva, I mean, this is a big step up for Neil Magny, another really tough competitor. It was a great win for him. I was really impressed with his boxing. He had a very slick jab. He was able to keep his distance nicely. He used his footwork really well. And even though Eric Silva was chopping down his leg, but it didn't affect Neil Magny. He was able to use his technique, his length. I thought it was a really, really good win for him. It was a good display of his skills. And if you're Neil Magny, you've turned it all around. You go from a guy that got dominated by Damian Maia to a guy that just beat Eric Silva. So a great moment for his career.
And did well on the ground as well. He dominated Eric Silva on the ground. There was a moment, Eric Silva, he takes a lot of risks in fights. He didn't look the same in this fight. He looked a lot less aggressive and a lot less explosive in the first round. Usually in the later rounds, he does tend to fade, but at least he's got that first round. And I think that's why a lot of people sort of look at him as an exciting guy. In this fight, we didn't necessarily get that. And the first time he tried something risky and crazy, he went and faked a takedown, and then he tried to do a spinning back elbow, and he wound up in side control with Neil Magny on top of him. So really feel like Eric Silva's a guy that's still putting everything together. I hope he hasn't reached his ceiling. He's a young guy, and I think that's one of the biggest things that he actually has going for him. So we'll see what happens with Eric Silva. Neil Magny, though, like you said, I was impressed with his striking. I was impressed with his ability to keep Eric Silva at range and not get sucked into those dangerous attacks that Eric Silva throws.
Yeah, certainly. And just looked really gassed when he threw some of those high sort of risk moves, some of those kicks. They just looked really slow and looked kind of sloppy, especially near the end of the fight. So I'm not sure. Maybe he was carrying an injury going into the fight and he couldn't train his cardio as hard. Maybe he thought it was Neil Magny and he didn't have to push himself as hard. Whatever it was, I mean, you're right. He's young. He's 31 years old, but I guess the clock's ticking, and over the next couple of years, we'll see if Eric Silva is able to reach the peak that people have sort of expected him to reach for a while now.
The other thing is, you would think that Eric Silva would try and destroy Neil Magny in the first round. I mean, I don't know if common sense is the right word, but generally, if a guy has had not so much of a training camp, wouldn't you go and try and finish him in the first round? Because common sense would say he probably won't be good for 3 rounds. And I'm surprised Eric Silva didn't come out faster and harder in the first round.
Yeah, especially when he had all the energy, and near the end when he was trying to sort of push the action, he just seemed a little bit slow. So maybe a big mistake on his part. What about the main event cast? Max Holloway versus Charles Oliveira. Both guys long, both guys lean, both guys exciting, have some cool stand-up techniques, some awesome ground techniques. They can almost mirror each other at times. Both guys do have areas where they're better than the other. What did you think going into this fight? Who did you think was going to win it?
I thought Max Holloway was going to take the win. I thought it was a typical grappler versus striker. Not quite. I mean, Charles Oliveira, he's got decent striking, but he really shines when he's on the ground. Max Holloway, he's no slouch on the ground, but he excels on the feet, as we've recently seen. He's been putting together some very, very impressive wins. And I just thought that with Charles Oliveira, as good as he is once the action hits the ground, he just isn't the greatest wrestler, and he's not always the best at taking the fight actually to the ground. I've said it before, like, when people talk about him challenging for the title, if he's going up against a guy like Jose Aldo, I definitely don't think he has the striking to beat Aldo. And, Aldo's a beast on the ground, and I don't think he has the wrestling, definitely doesn't have the wrestling, in my opinion, to take the fight to the ground. I mean, when guys like Chad Mendes struggle to get Jose Aldo to the ground, I wouldn't favor Charles Oliveira to be able to take it there either. And I just thought that Max Holloway, he's got decent takedown defense. He's going to be able to keep the action on the feet, beat up Charles Oliveira's body, and really dance around him for 5 rounds or however many rounds it takes to, batter him or at least put him away. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with that analysis, man. I really thought Max was going to win it. A lot of people saying that this would be a fight that propels somebody to contendership. I don't really feel like that, even though Max Holloway is ranked number 5th. Oliveira is down there at number 7. I didn't really think it was going to get Holloway the next title shot or anything like that, but I did think it was a good opportunity for him to keep the hype train rolling and keep that momentum in his favor. Unfortunately, we saw what transpired. Charles Oliveira getting that shoulder injury, sort of the crowd missing out on the sort of exciting main event that everyone is looking forward to. And I guess the card really needed it as well. I think they really needed a good main event to pull it off.
I do agree with you. It wasn't the greatest card, like we mentioned earlier on the show. Just wasn't there was some decent wins, there was some decent performances or impressive wins, but it just wasn't the most action-packed card, and he didn't have the biggest name, so I think a lot of people were banking on this fight to really close the show off nicely. And I think, there's that saying, all's well that ends well, and people can forgive you if it ends well. And I think that's what people were hoping for in this card, and it just didn't happen, and it left a bit of a bitter taste in my mouth. I feel like, especially, the UFC does their best to promote these main events, especially when you've got guys like Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira who have had a lot of exposure, but they're not the biggest of names. So you see all these promos, these Fox Sports promos before a fight, after a fight, talking about these guys, and Charles Oliveira getting his black belt stripe and this kind of stuff, and then the fight ends in what, a minute and a half, I think, a minute 39 seconds. It's very deflating, especially for a card like that. And I agree with you. It wasn't necessarily a fight that I thought would give a number one contender. I still think Chad Mendes is definitely up there. You've got that fight with Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo to make. Then you've got Frankie Edgar, who is pretty overdue for a title shot. You've got Ricardo Lamas, who's still up there. So I didn't think the winner of this fight would necessarily be fighting for a title shot. Would be getting a title shot, but he may be fighting for the next title shot. So I definitely respect Max Holloway in calling out Frankie Edgar. I know a lot of people got on Max Holloway because he was celebrating and jumping on the cage and saying it was a douchebag move because Charles Oliveira was injured. I think the injury itself was a neck strain. That's the word on the street that's coming out. So I'm not too sure. He definitely got carried out on a stretcher and is in the back, and apparently he was still grabbing onto his neck. One of those weird mystery phantom injuries, I guess. Some people saying it's because he cuts too much weight. I'm not too sure. I'm not a doctor. It's just one of those weird things. We remember Rafael dos Anjos at UFC 117 when Clay Guida took him down. And I don't know if he broke his jaw, but he definitely got a jaw injury. So just as far as Max Holloway celebrating, I guess people got to understand that he's been training for X amount of time, X amount of weeks or months, and he's counting on this money, and he's got his family, so a win's a win. I didn't think it was that douchey, and Max Holloway seems to me like one of those emotional guys, those emotional Hawaiians who, really is going to celebrate the moment and find the positive side of it. So even though Charles Oliveira got injured, he did the right thing and came and checked on him pretty much straight away. I wouldn't necessarily label that as a douche move just because he celebrated the win. I mean, for a guy with his family, he's definitely counting on that money, and he may be happy about that more than anything else, and the fact that he progresses in the division.
Oh, for sure. And like you said, he checked on him. The guy's 23 years old. People need to lay off him. What do you think? Would you want to see him fight Frankie Edgar at this UFC Hawaii event? And do you think they'd fly us down there? Because I think it would be quite a nice time at UFC Hawaii. Yes, no. Those are my answers to that.
Yeah, I don't mind. I'm definitely all up for seeing Max Holloway against Frankie Edgar. I also wouldn't mind seeing Max Holloway against Ricardo Lamas, even though Lamas is coming off that loss to Chad Mendes. I guess that's what you got to do, just because Frankie Edgar, unfortunately, he's not going to get in the next title shot. It doesn't make sense. Of course, they're going to do Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor. Assuming that fight does happen and something crazy doesn't intervene and someone gets injured or something like that, you need to keep Frankie Edgar busy. So give him Max Holloway. Yeah, I do think that's a good fight. What about yourself?
Yeah, and I think it would be exciting to see what Max could do against Frankie, because Frankie is unbelievably good. If Max could go through Frankie, then no doubt about it, he deserves the title shot. In a lot of ways, I was almost surprised, because I know Max has a lot of belief in his skills, but it's a tough call-out. Frankie Edgar is a super tough opponent, and of course the big thing is, Max is a great striker, but it'll probably be down to the wrestling and the grappling, and I don't know. We'll see what works out. We'll see what happens if that fight gets made. I guess we'll break it down then, but a super tough matchup. So a lot of respect to Max for you're not going, I want the next title shot. I had that fight with Conor once. I want another one. If he beats Jose Aldo, and going, to possibly one of the toughest guys in the division, Frankie Edgar. So our respect goes out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing is, with Conor McGregor and Max Holloway, at least it'd be a striker versus striker affair. Here, you've got Frankie Edgar, who could completely nullify his striking and just take him on the ground and ride him out. I almost feel like it's a Cub Swanson, Frankie Edgar kind of fight. When Cub Swanson was on that tear, he was knocking people out, and then him and Frankie Edgar fought, and obviously Frankie Edgar rode him out for 99% of 5 rounds. This is kind of similar, because Max Holloway beat Cub Swanson, in theory, out Cub Swanson, and now he wants to fight Frankie Edgar. So I think the fight may play out a little bit similarly. I'm not saying that Frankie Edgar would necessarily win. I think there's a good chance he would, but it is a similar matchup in my books. So, Max Holloway, he's got to have a lot of belief in himself if he wants to call out a guy like Frankie Edgar, who's the number 2 in the division. And if it wasn't for Conor McGregor holding that strap, may very well have been number 1.
Yeah, it's all very exciting nevertheless. And it's good to see Max up there and with a winner. Exciting young competitor, 23 years old. We'll see what happens there. So there it is, guys. UFC Fight Night, Holloway versus Oliveira in the books, Fight Night 74. It's a shame that the main event didn't work out the way that it should have. John Anik mentioned that if it is a rematch, he doesn't want Max Holloway to give away his game plan. I don't really want to see a rematch. I'd rather see Max Holloway fight someone else. The Ricardo Lamas fight is a great fight as well, Cass. Let's talk about something else for a second. Obviously, everybody around the world knows the big news by now. UFC 193 will be at Etihad Stadium, which is something that just blew our minds. Me and Casper were really thinking it was going to be Rod Laver Arena, and nothing to do against the UFC or anything like that. It's just that the card itself, it didn't seem like it was going to be able to fit 70,000, they're saying, into Etihad Stadium. Now, Cass, you were able to actually go down for the press event when this was announced. You went down to Etihad Stadium. You were able to talk to the CEO for Etihad himself. What was that whole experience like? Before I break it down and ask you a few particular questions, what kind of vibe did you get when you walked into the arena?
I feel like everyone was on the same page as myself. I was surprised as everybody else. We got the tweets, obviously. We found out middle of the night that the event was going to be happening at Etihad Stadium, and we were confused. Why so late? And obviously the Aussies are going to find out in the morning, but why don't you want to announce it at a more Aussie appropriate time? And of course, it was so that the rest of the world, like the United States, can start posting about it and writing about it. And, they really released it for the American crowd. But basically, it was very early in the morning and everyone was kind of in shock. Obviously, the UFC people knew, the UFC PR, et cetera, but I think everyone was just happy that it is going to be at Etihad Stadium as opposed to Rod Laver Arena. Everyone was kind of on the same page and thinking like, wow, we really thought it was going to be Rod Laver. And you mentioned the card, leading up to the event, we spoke to Tom Wright, we spoke to various UFC people, and the consensus was always there's going to be at least one title fight, possibly two. Now, we understand that two title fights would make sense if you're trying to pack in 70,000 people. You may have the Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit, and maybe give us a Conor McGregor title fight. That was pretty unlikely, but maybe a Ronda Rousey, maybe a Weidman versus Rockhold. So that's what we were thinking. And once Weidman versus Rockhold was for UFC 194, and then the rumors were spreading that Ronda Rousey was going to be fighting in December, we kind of thought, you know what? Lawler and Condit, that's going to be a great fight, but unless you really pack in the undercard, it's probably going to be Rod Laver, because I just don't see how they're going to fit 70,000 people in with Lawler and Condit as the main event. Granted, it is going to be a fantastic fight. So I think there was shock and relief and happiness in the air when I went down to Etihad Stadium. But seeing the actual stadium standing on the ground, man, it's a grand stadium, and it really set in the fact that not only are we going to be getting an event here, a numbered pay-per-view, our first one since UFC 127. I mean, the numbers say it all. It was a long time ago. I believe that was 2011. But not only are we getting that, we're getting a title fight. It's going to be in this massive, massive stadium. So really exciting stuff, Dennis.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting part for me will be how they're going to set the stadium up, because before they announced 70,000, I didn't really think they could fit more than 56,000 into the stadium. Obviously, WWE Global Warning was there, and that was the record they set. And they had people sitting on the ground as well around the ring. They did have a stage though. So when you were talking to the CEO for Etihad Stadium, did you mention anything about how they're looking to set this whole thing up, and if they are really going to look to fill it with 70,000 people?
That is what they're going to do. Look, there's 55,000 permanent seats. That's in the stands. And there's room for about 16,000 on the ground itself. So if you add those two, you've got 70,000. There's going to be ground seats. Of course, everybody understands that. I asked them about the screens. Those awesome screens that you see in all the big events. And I know that in the arenas here in Australia, we don't necessarily have those for whatever reason. I think usually we have them in kind of small arenas. But those screens, like when Conor McGregor comes out and you see the middle of the arena and it's got the Irish flag on there. If you're in Canada and GSP are entering, you've got that flag there and all those awesome... all the awesome production. So we're going to get those awesome screens. They're going to hang them off a gondola. That's what they call it. The roof is going to be closed, of course. It is a retractable roof for all those that didn't know. It is going to be closed. The gondola is going to be hanging off there, and we are going to be getting those awesome screens. So this thing is going to be a massive spectacle.
Oh, absolutely. And guys, you can check out Casper's interview on our YouTube channel right now, youtube.com/Submission Radio AU. Cass, I think he had a really good interview. Good stuff out there, man. He also interviewed Dan Kelly and Jake Matthews about being a part of the card. Just quickly, what kind of vibe did that have? Because, I mean, a huge thing for two Aussies, two guys that live in Melbourne, to be able to be on the biggest UFC card possibly, that they've ever had.
I think with Jake Matthews, this is him realizing a dream because he's a young guy. I think he turned 21 the night before. How crazy is that?
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine he went out or did anything, and then here he is the morning of his 21st, year on the world, and it's just announced that he's going to be competing in an arena that could have between, I don't know, realistically 40 to 70,000 people in there. So for a young guy like that's him realizing his dream. And then for Dan Kelly, he's obviously he's competed at the Olympics, which is the highest level in terms of judo, and now he's going to be doing it at the UFC, which is obviously fought in the UFC before, but never on an event like this. It's one thing to fight in Sydney at All Phones Arena, it's another thing to fight at Adelaide Entertainment Centre, but those are relatively small arenas, and here you're going to be fighting in front of such a large crowd. I think they were both just taken back by the fact that there's actually going to be that many people, and they're going to be fighting on an event that's, so grand. I mean, the previous ones, they were fighting on Fight Pass cards. Their last two fights were both on Fight Pass, and now they're going to be fighting on this massive event.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a huge deal. And for people at home, a lot of people sort of criticizing, why is Melbourne calling itself a sports capital? And it's definitely not the sports capital of the world. But for people listening at home that don't know much about Melbourne, we do have a whole bunch of stadiums. One of them is the MCG that holds 100,000 people. We have Rodley Arena, Amy Stadium, and we do have the F1, Australian Open, AFL, NRL, rugby, and a whole bunch of other sports here in Australia. So when it comes to the
Spring Racing Carnival,
Carnival, V8, all that stuff. So for the people in Australasia, this is the sporting capital, and the venues are just fantastic. We've been trying to get a bid for the Olympics for a really, really long time, and also the World Soccer Cup. And if it does come to Melbourne, they won't actually need to build. Fun fact, they won't actually need to build too much because we already have most of the stuff here ready to go. So anybody traveling down to Melbourne, it will be a fun experience. But Cass, looking at the card, obviously 70,000 people. To me, the card's not good enough just yet. And, you and me have been brainstorming ideas. Who could they add to the card? Just today, news came out, Cro Cop will actually be fighting at UFC Fight Night in South Korea against Anthony Hamilton. I'm incredibly disappointed. I really thought Cro Cop could have been added to the card. He fought in Sydney at UFC 110. Just off the top of your mind, are there any fights that could be added that could really make a big difference to this card?
Yeah, to me, it just seems like a lot of the big names are already booked out. The main fights that I wanted to see, you always knew you were going to get the Mark Hunts on there, the Robert Whittakers, the Dan Kellers, the Jake Matthews. I actually wanted to see the international stars. If you're not going to have guys like, say, Mark Hunt fighting for the title to get in all those casual Aussie MMA fans or the casual fans who may not know anything about MMA but go, hey, he's our guy, he's a local guy, he's fighting for a world title. I don't know much about him and I don't know much about the sport, but I'm going to go down and see it. And that's where guys like Mark Hunt would come in, guys like Hector Lombard, had he not failed that test and, won against Roy McDonald, he could have been fighting for the title in the main event as opposed to Carlos Condit. Now that those ones are out, I thought, you know what, let's focus on the international talent. So I really, really wanted to see Luke Rockhold and Chris Weidman. Luke Rockhold, like we've mentioned on the show before, he's got a bit of a following here. He's fought here. The people know him. And Chris Weidman, he's obviously a big star. Another title fight. Get the middleweight title and the welterweight title and have them on the same card. If not, have Ronda Rousey here because she's a massive, massive star. And I kind of think I understand you need her for the end of year card. Actually, sorry, she's going to be fighting in January, so that doesn't really work either. But you need her for a big card. She can carry a card all by herself. But if you're trying to get 70,000 people, that's a lot of bodies in one stadium. You need a massive attraction, and I think Ronda Rousey would be that attraction. Also, we've spoken to some of the PR brass, and they made a good point. Every time the UFC comes down here, there's a lot of negative press. The media was talking about how it's a barbaric sport, and et cetera, et cetera. I did speak to some of the media there. I spoke to some people from Channel 10 and other channels, and their general consensus, because a lot of times they don't have control over how the stories are spun, but their general consensus is, look, a lot of the people that are in charge of writing these stories, they're a little bit out of touch and they just need to get onto it. They basically need to jump on the bandwagon because it's here, it's not going anywhere. The time for being negative about MMA was maybe during the election and when the cage ban was still up in the air. Is it going to get approved? Is it not going to get approved? Now it's legal here. You can fight MMA in a cage here. It's not going away. The UFC's coming down. It's going to be a big event. It's going to be great for tourism. and the economy here in Melbourne as well, you might as well just get on it. So I think the tables are starting to turn. The winds are changing as well. And, going back to my point before, I think Ronda Rousey would have definitely helped that, because now you've got something a little bit different. It's not Stipe Miocic beating on Mark Hunt for, 4.5 or 5 rounds till he's a bloody pomp. You can look at a woman, a powerful female, someone who's accomplished a lot, someone who's really gone, not so much against the grain, but her and herself, she started a revolution and really put women's MMA on the map. So I think Ronda Rousey would have been very positive, not only for the card and to draw, but just in general for the UFC as far as fan perception and media as well. So that's what I'm disappointed about. No Rockhold, no Weidman, and no Ronda.
Yeah, and certainly Ronda, like you mentioned, could have really helped sell this card. At the moment, not sure how many tickets they're going to sell altogether, but I don't know. I know UFC 195 is looking like it's going to stack up to be almost like a female main card, but I thought maybe Miesha Tate could be someone who fights in Australia, seeing as she's not fighting Ronda Rousey anymore. She's someone that people like here in Australia, obviously. When it comes to female fighters, she's probably one of the most popular behind Ronda Rousey. So, yeah, interesting to see what happens now. And also, Richie Vass, I think he may be fighting Neil Seery, which will be a nice addition to one of the undercards.
I was going to say, also with Ronda Rousey, the good thing is you can put her on a lot of our Australian TV shows. Mm-hmm. So, like, I don't know, the Good Morning Australia or the news, or, I can't see Robbie Law or Carlos Condit doing a feature on Better Homes and Gardens, but I can see Ronda Rousey doing that, or getting on the 7 p.m. project, or the project, whatever they call it these days. So I think that would have been another good reason why they'd bring Ronda Rousey into the Melbourne card. But she's going to be fighting at UFC 195 against Holly Holm, something that surprised a lot of people. None more surprised than Miesha Tate, probably none more disappointed than Chris Cyborg. Just want to get your thoughts before we wrap up the show. It's just a quick thing I want to talk about. Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, UFC 195. What's the initial reaction, Dennis? Do you think this is the right thing? And obviously, were you surprised that it's not going to be Miesha Tate fighting Ronda Rousey?
Excitement and disappointment, my friend. Excitement because I don't know if I liked the Miesha Tate Ronda Rousey dynamic. I didn't know if I was super excited to watch them rematch, but I would still watch that fight. So excited because there will be a new competitor, but disappointed because I'm afraid this might ruin Holly Holm's brand, her perception with fans, the future of the division. Look, here's my sort of 2 cents on it. Holly Holm is a fantastic athlete, but in the last few fights that she had in the UFC, I still didn't see a Holly Holm that I think could match Ronda Rousey. She is still improving. She's quite new to MMA, and I think she needs time to develop at least one more fight, at least for her to get her feet grounded and prepare for it. I do think if she goes out there and loses to Ronda Rousey in devastating fashion in the first round, after Ronda Rousey retires, I don't know who's going to be a star, because if she just destroys absolutely everybody and then she retires, you can't really label it a division of elite athletes when everybody just gets destroyed. And I really thought Holly Holm could be a star in the future after Ronda Rousey goes, because obviously she's got that amazing physique. She's a previous world champion, and people like to see her fight. So I'm a bit scared that it's just too soon. And look, I have no doubt in my mind. I have no doubt that Ronda Rousey will beat her, but I'm just hoping she doesn't just destroy her in 30 seconds. Because if she does, it's going to be a lot harder to rebuild Holly Holm down in the future when you really need her to be a superstar. What did you think when you heard the news?
Yeah, Holly Holm's always been looked at as a prospect, as somewhat of a work in progress, as opposed to someone who's ready for the title. And she's had a couple of chances, and I think had she brutally knocked out Raquel Pennington or Marion Renault, it would have been a lot more justifiable. I'm happy in the sense that Holly Holm is someone different other than Miesha Tate. I think I'm like a lot of people out there. I just wasn't that interested in seeing Miesha Tate versus Ronda Rousey 3. We've already seen the fight happen. It's happened twice, and it's ended the exact same way. Just the second fight took a little bit longer. I am definitely picking Ronda Rousey in this fight against Holly Holm, right? To me, it just seems like Holly Holm, it's not that her performances haven't been bad, but it just seems to me like she isn't that sure of herself just yet. And when we had Mike Winklejohn on the shows pretty recently, just a few weeks ago, he didn't exactly say that he wants her to have Ronda Rousey next. He said, the time is not yet. We want to have at least a couple more fights. So I think that's another reason why I was surprised that they went with Holly Holm. And not only that, because Dana White publicly said after the fight night with, UFC on Fox 16, I think, that Miesha Tate is getting the next title shot. So certainly surprising, but despite picking Ronda Rousey in this fight, I do think Holly Holm brings a different challenge. She, of course, like a lot of other Ronda Rousey opponents, they basically bum rushed her and charged in there, guns blazing, almost looking like they're trying to get that Hail Mary knockout blow or take her down. I'm not really too sure what exactly they were trying, but Holly Holm is literally the exact opposite. She doesn't want to get in close. She always wants to keep range with her opponents. She uses a lot of lateral movement. Ronda Rousey, like a lot of Ronda Rousey's opponents have backed straight up against the cage. Holly Holm doesn't do that. She uses her lateral footwork. She moves left and right. She uses kicks to keep her opponents at range. So to me, this is a lot more intriguing than a Miesha Tate fight. Ronda Rousey fights have kind of become Ronda Rousey versus insert generic name here. It almost doesn't really matter who her opponents are. It's almost just you watch the fights because you want to see how quickly Ronda Rousey can win. That's what it's become these days. So I'll be interested to see how this fight goes. But the other thing that's interesting about it is that even though a lot of people didn't necessarily want to see Miesha Tate versus Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate is the bigger name than Holly Holm. But I guess in saying that, when you put Ronda Rousey's name on the marquee and you've got her as a headliner, she's going to sell pay-per-views anyway, so I don't think it really matters at this point. Now, I guess it gives Miesha Tate more of a chance to, I guess, prove that she's even more of a threat. I don't really know who you give her next. Maybe Amanda Nunes, or maybe you give Miesha Tate Chris Cyborg, because if they're going to make Chris Cyborg versus Ronda Rousey, and you would think that they're going to do it probably at UFC 200 to really stack that card, Cyborg's going to have to make weight at least once. There's no way they're going to give her the title fight if she hasn't proven that she can make 135 pounds and potentially ruin one of the biggest, pay-per-view title fights in history. So I'm thinking maybe you give Miesha Tate Chris Cyborg.
Yeah, I'll be incredibly disappointed, actually, now that you mention it, if they don't do that. It's almost like they have a sneaky plan in motion, but we just don't see the whole plan just yet. So, yeah, hopefully that happens. And, yeah, hopefully Miesha Tate can have that fight, because that would be incredibly exciting. But, yeah, Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey would have been a great fight for UFC in Melbourne. Obviously, Australia's got deep roots in boxing, so she would actually be quite a popular fighter here in Australia. I think a lot of people would know her from her boxing, and being able to sell her as a boxer would actually get a lot of the crowd down there, because boxing is such a big part of Australian history.
I couldn't agree with you more. So rather than sit here and be upset about the card, I'm just excited that it did actually happen. We are getting stadium show, and I'm very curious to see how many people actually pack into this arena come November 15th. So in the comments below, definitely let us know what you think about the card. What do you think about the lineup? I mean, just to let you know, in case you've been living under a rock, or in case for whatever reason you don't know, the card at the moment is Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit title fight, Mark Hunt versus Bigfoot Silva, Bisping versus Robert Whittaker. Funnily enough, we had we had Mark Hunt and Robert Whittaker on the show just before. So two guys that are almost at the top of the card on the show today. We've got Jake Matthews versus Akbar Ariola, Kalnoke versus Peter Sabota, John Vellante, Anthony Perosh, Daniel Kelly versus Ricardo Abreu, and Richie Walsh versus Steve Kennedy. Some Australia versus Australian action there. Let us know. What do you think? Is that enough to pack in 70,000 people? And before we wrap up this show, obviously want to say a big thank you to our guests, Mark Hunt, Robert Whittaker, Urijah Faber, and a quick one with Jason High. Before we wrap up, Dennis, any last words for the fans?
Yeah, I watched Southpaw this week and was a little bit disappointed by the movie. Now, I'm not telling you guys not to watch it. Still a fun movie. Jake Gyllenhaal does an incredible performance, but too many cliches. And the story is a little bit lame. So the other problem I have is, why do movies now show you the entire movie in the trailer? It's like you go in, you see the whole movie in the trailer, and it takes away a lot of the excitement and suspense from the movie. But definitely check it out. It won't be one of your favorite boxing movies of all time, though.
No Rocky?
Definitely no Rocky, and not even a Rocky Balboa in my books.
Wow, harsh criticism, as always, as has become customary from Dennis. The other thing is, I'm pretty much done with trailers. I mean, Star Wars, that's a movie that I'm really excited about, and I'm trying not to watch any trailers, teasers, or anything. And I actually managed to get away with it in Star Wars Episode 3. Didn't watch a single trailer before watching, and I agree. You watch movies now, or you watch trailers now, and you've pretty much, you know what's happening in the whole movie before you even go and watch them, so...
Yeah, well, with the Southpaw trailer, it's actually, the trailer has 3/4 of the movie in it. So it's unbelievable. And I agree with you, Cass. I mean, there's trailers out there like Deadpool that I can't stop myself from watching, but I think I'm going to give these trailers the old kibosh. And they better not show too much in the Batman vs. Superman movie, because Dennis is going to get cranky.
I saw the trailer for that, and I actually kind of tuned out. So I'm hoping that's going to be a good movie. Anyway, that's enough from us, guys. As always, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SubmissionAUS. Don't forget to check out the website, submissionradio.com. In case you didn't know, we had a website. We've kind of spruced it up recently, so it's a lot more easier and sexier and accessible, and you can check out all our past episodes. Everything's there. For all the latest news, probably submissionradio.com is the best place to go, or us on Twitter or our Facebook, Submission Radio AUS. Definitely follow us on or like the page on Facebook. And till then, guys, we'll catch you next week.